Yeah, it will sometimes mean that things will change for sure. I mean, there's no kind of, I mean, if you can do something, with AI that requires less people, generally what happens is that's a repetitive task, which isn't the real adding value. So the way I think about it would be if you're, building products and you start using AI to build those products, you can build those products much faster. We released an IDE last year called Bob, and you can build.
What's an IDE?
So what you're looking at is a development environment for your coders, right? So they're looking at building their code, but they're using basically an assistant. And that assistant is saying to them, what are you trying to build? And you can tell it, and it can start to look at the industry standards that are associated with that.
I see.
Any security risks that you might be building into your code. So it's starting to help. Now,
you can loads of stuff that you might have had to make a note for yourself to deal with. It can go off and at least give you a head start on it.
Yeah, or you can do it in kind of an online mode. So while you're typing, it's kind of going, I wouldn't do that.
Oh shit! I can imagine. Ian, can you imagine that? While you're writing, the computer going, "Nah, I think you're barking up the wrong tree there."
I mean that would get turned off immediately.
Yeah. But if you
warmer.
So if you set
Hello and welcome to another Telecoms.com podcast. Our first one back in the studio for weeks. I barely recognise the place.
Just realised it's quite hot in here, so
you just
disrobing. I'll stop.
Yeah, you've got 3 layers on, man. No wonder you're hot.
Yeah. Disrobing, I like that.
Before I go off on opening bollocks tangents, I should say that we're delighted to have a special guest for the first time. I'm going to see if I can not fuck your surname up too much, Owen. Owen, I think you pronounce it Colin.
Yeah.
Colin. And it's spelled Coughlan.
Yeah.
And you're from Cork.
From Cork.
Southern Ireland.
Yeah.
And apparently, well, you tell us, I won't put words in your mouth. I mean, not everyone in Ireland would pronounce it that way, is that right?
No. The most common way to pronounce it is Coughlin.
Coughlin,
yeah.
Right.
But in Cork City and Kinsale, for some reason, we pronounce it Colin.
Ah, okay. Fair enough.
Is that a common thing with the GH in Cork generally to sort of drop that? Or
yeah, for Colin, yeah.
Right.
So if
he's wondering more generally.
I just wanted generally, like Andalusians don't say
no.
It's
not a general thing. No, it's just with that name.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's actually the funniest thing was one of the few people internationally to get my name spot on was when I was sitting in reception in Gothenburg at an Ericsson building, and when they called my name, they got it spot on. They said Owen Colin, and I was like, what? Because it's not even what I'm listening for anymore.
No, indeed. So Owen, you're from IBM.
Yes.
And in a bit, we're going to get into why have we got someone from IBM on the Telecoms.com podcast.
Absolutely.
Because I think both Ian and I have had to confess to you, although you're probably aware of it already, we haven't really written about IBM much. Yes. But it's obviously a massive
Well, we've written about
company.
Red Hat. I've written about Red Hat quite a bit.
Yeah, that doesn't count. They bought them. That doesn't count.
It's part of IBM.
only because they bought them. I'm talking about core IBM here.
Right.
But yes, anyway, we'll get into all that.
Sure.
But before we do, little bit of opening bollocks. Oh, I've got to say, as I've just been moaning to everyone in the room, probably already to a boring extent, I've got a dodgy back, which I pulled a back muscle, actually trying to do some exercise in order to preempt exactly that happening.
Yeah.
So it feels like the COVID of exercise mishaps.
And you're dosed up to the eyeballs on opiates.
Yeah, and I'm dosed up the eyeballs on every bit of painkiller I could find in our medicine cupboard. So let's see how I sound in an hour or two.
Might not be that effective if some of it's a bit old, But
yeah, well, let's see. It could be like
the half-life.
Did you read or see Wolf of Wall Street?
I've read.
The Quaaludes.
Yeah, where he does some Quaaludes and they're really old, so he thinks they've done fuck all, so he just doubles down. And all they really do is take a while to kick in, and then he just goes completely mental.
It's very good.
Hey, sorry, I found out why the stock market went up massively. Iran says the Strait of Hormuz is completely open for the remainder of the ceasefire.
Right.
That's it, sorry.
Okay. Well, I mean, there's loads of people who...
This will be all news on Monday.
Yeah, well, there's loads of people whose whole livelihood just hinges on little incremental bits of news from the Straits of
It's just
fucking
the
Hormuz.
fact that they said that. They've been saying, "Oh, watch out for the mines and stuff," but now they said it's completely open. That's a big change.
Right, it is. Okay, fair enough. Mate, that signs of progress.
Wait, let's see the
Be nice.
oil price. Oh my God, the oil price just went down 11%.
Right.
So let's go to the pump now.
Dennis, don't say it reflects at the pump though.
Yeah, we'll check
they
the pump
never
later.
comes
Yeah.
In
down.
6 months, maybe.
Yeah.
It's too late, actually. I've realised they've gone up. When I went and filled my car not too long ago, it cost me 60 quid to fill it up. It cost me 75 quid the other day.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So there we go. So anyway, yeah, keep an eye out for me because the mixture of painkillers and alcohol might make me go barking mad. But that could at least be entertaining.
I have to censor a lot of stuff.
Yeah, just keep that bleep button.
The last 20 minutes is just bleeping.
Yeah. And then other opening bollocks. Pierre, you've no longer got an excuse to have a French accent, have you?
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, I've been accepted by His Majesty to become a UK citizen.
Well, congratulations. Welcome.
What did you pay him?
Well, I actually did pay him 1,600 quid.
Yeah,
1,600 quid?
It's quite
Yes.
expensive, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
And then we wonder why so many people just do it on the sly.
Can you? I don't think.
You don't.
Well,
You don't do it
you know
on the
what's
fly.
always in the papers about illegal immigrants
Oh.
and all that.
Oh,
sort of
yeah.
thing.
But yeah, after almost 20 years, I think it was time. Yeah.
20 years you've been here.
In September, it'll be 20 years. Yeah.
How old are you?
39.
God.
Wow.
Yeah, I've forgotten you've been here since
I've
you
been
were
here longer than I've been in
strip of a
France.
lad.
Not really properly French anymore.
No, and
really.
I will still support France at the World Cup. Sorry.
Do you have any
Let's
kind
asked
of
that question and refused it, I think.
when you're in France, do you have any kind of English accent there?
No.
Don't laugh. It's possible.
Do people not say
no.
to you, you actually
I think that's
sound
only true
English?
with like Americans and British. Like people, when you switch from an English accent to another accent,
Right.
then maybe there's a bit of that. But when it's a whole different language, I don't think that's.
Yeah.
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 I don't think they should have let you. I think you should have to have an English accent in French to be allowed to be English. So
I'm not even going to
our
attempt this.
standards are slack. No, congratulations, mate. Great to have you. And I don't have that much else to talk about. I went to another gig at the garage where you and I went that time.
Oh.
Went and saw Zach Schultz Gang, and that was very good. This is sort of like blues-based guitar rock.
Okay.
Think of like Joe Satriani or Rory Gallagher, that sort of thing.
Very good.
In fact, he did a
Very
Rory
different.
Gallagher cover while they were there. So they're a great band. I recommend them, Zach Schultz Gang.
You cannot put Joey Satriani and Rory Gallagher in the same sentence.
Was that the
Well, you
weekend?
know, they're just sort
They
of
both play
precocious
guitar,
guitarists. Well, you think they're more different than I do.
Yeah.
Last weekend.
That was last weekend, yeah.
Sounds good.
Have you been up to anything?
Not really.
No,
No.
okay,
What
well,
did I do at Easter? I went for a long walk around Hampstead with someone who we're going to get on the podcast soon.
Oh, right.
I won't say who it is because you don't like announcing them in case they
I
cancel.
know who it is.
You'll know who it is.
Hampstead, which is where I grew up.
Yeah, it's quite nice, Hampstead Heath.
Did you
It
see?
is? Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of my childhood on
There's,
Heath.
there's like an old stately home there with
Kenwood House.
It had like a lot of artwork in it. It had some Vermeers in it. There's only about 6 Vermeers that aren't in the Netherlands or something, and they've got one. So
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Do you know all the times when I used to like ride my bike? So Kenwood House is like the opposite end of the heath to where I lived. I lived on the southern end of the heath, and we used to ride our bikes up there. I never went in there.
And then there's a pub called the Spaniard. Do you know that?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
quite nice.
Been there many
Did you
times.
see Ricky
Had some
Gervais?
food there. No. Saw Jude Law though.
Oh,
No, I didn't really.
Okay, well that's a good bit of opening bollocks.
Not very telecom relevant, but
Well, that's why we call it opening bollocks and not opening telecom bollocks.
okay.
So, Owen,
Getting down to business.
yeah, why don't we start by you just positioning yourself? What it is you do at IBM, and that might naturally help people understand why we got someone from IBM on a telecoms podcast. So,
Sure.
tell us what your job is.
Yeah, so I'm the global CTO for telecommunications,
Right.
And that's with the technology side of the business,
As opposed to
the consulting side of
Right.
the business,
which has always been a big thing that IBM does, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a big part of what we do.
Oh, we should interrupt. You brought something over before we
I
forget.
did.
Should we talk about that now? Before you get on a roll.
Constant interruptions.
Yeah, sorry.
So this is your prize. For
Oh,
today.
I've heard of this.
Yeah,
That looks really
it's
good.
one of my favorites. Yeah.
This is Red Breast. Single pot still Irish whiskey, aged 12 years, with a picture of a robin on it. Cool. We might have to have a bit.
It's a nice box.
Is it a Middleton? It says
It's made in Middleton, yeah.
Right. Because
there is another kind of part of the
Middleton very rare.
They
or
call
something
it
like that.
Middleton very rare. Yeah, this isn't that, but it's made in the same.
So
by the same company.
Ian and I discovered Middleton very rare years ago when we were on
in Germany. I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
We were just we were thinking. We were just out and we were in a bar and we said, we quite like a Irish whiskey. Can you recommend one? And he recommended Middleton, and we just got it and we thought that was really tasty. And then we got the bill. And it was about 20 quid a shot or something. Yeah. It was really pricey. So sorry, Informer.
So that was about when it was £1 a pint.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was actually in a restaurant in Ireland, and the barman was French. Mm. And I went up and ordered a Middleton.
He's not French, he's English.
Yes. Not yet. So I went up and ordered a Middleton, and he insisted that I have Redbreast instead. And said that it's just as good, but not the same commercial overhead.
Right. No, Middleton's fucking expensive, man.
Yeah.
You're like hundreds of pounds for a bottle or something.
Yeah.
So this is very generous of you. Thank you. Now we've got to have a bit. Now I'm really going to go.
A nice collection of Irish whiskies.
I know. To go with Luke's Connemara.
Open our own bar.
Exactly.
In this studio, I think.
Well, I like all whiskey. I quite like bourbon, and I always think, I'm sure this is sort of heretical oversimplification, but I always thought Irish whiskey is a bit sweeter than Scotch, so it sort of resides halfway between bourbon and Scotch for me.
Yeah, so it depends on the whiskey itself, but sometimes a lot of the Scotch whiskies that I've tasted have been very peaty and heavy.
Yeah.
This is not that. This will be a little bit sweeter. And
do you recommend it with ice or straight up?
I'd normally say straight up, but
works for me. Saves me having to hurt my back by leaning in.
I'm just worried about
have some glasses.
There's an answer to that from Magnum PI, isn't there? When he always gets offered ice with his whiskey, and he goes, "I'm not a bloody American."
Right? Is that Higgins?
Higgins, yeah. Very nice.
I don't think there's anything wrong with a bit of one ice cube.
No,
up the flavour.
there's nothing wrong with it. Yeah, you can have a drop of water as well.
Higgins.
Yeah. Well, I notice it most with Scotch. I remember the first time, I quite like those PT, like Lafroig type of
Yeah,
Scotches.
they're very nice, yeah.
And then someone told me, and I'd sip it neat, and someone said, just put a splash of water in it, and it completely transformed the flavour.
Yeah, it opens up some of the flavour.
Yeah, it sweetens it.
Yeah.
But I don't find it has such a profound effect on the Irish whiskies I've tasted. So something about Scotch, I don't know what it is. I'd need to look that up. Anyway, here you go.
Thank you.
Should we have a little taste
at the end?
Well, you don't have to have any, but I think we should review it before we move on. Before we go any further, I'm delighted to announce that this podcast has a sponsor. Unperturbed by our unorthodox style, Cohere Technologies has decided to take the plunge. For any listeners that missed our previous pods with its CEO, Cohere is the innovator behind Universal Spectrum Multiplier software for 4G and 5G, and Pulsone technology for 5G and 6G coexistence, ISAC and NTN. Thanks a lot, Cohere. Your support is much appreciated.
Yeah, it's good. There's my review.
10 out of 10.
No, and it's, yes, as you say, quite light drinking.
Yeah,
considering it's a whiskey.
It's better than a Jameson's.
That's his review. Better than
Jameson's.
Thank you very much.
Very good.
I don't think you're invited in Ireland anymore.
Sorry, I didn't get you a glass, Pierre, but you normally turn it down anyway.
Yeah, that's all right.
No, he's cycling later.
It doesn't matter.
Things like that.
And that's never stopped him before. Okay. Sorry, Owen, I thought we should get that done.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Thanks again.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
So you were saying, you're the CTO of the Telecoms technology part of IBM. And to people who might not be obvious, why does IBM have a telecoms bit at all?
Yeah, so if you look at IBM as a whole, there's a very broad portfolio of products which have been built over the years, and we can talk about some of the history in a while. But why it matters to telecoms is that we have a very strong history in the area of OSS and BSS.
Right.
So on the consulting side, you have a lot of business transformations that they do with lots of different technology, including IBM's technology. On the OSS side, we've been working with customers for years. But now that AI is playing a far more prominent part in the whole discussion, and I think people are realizing that they need to consolidate what they're doing in AI and have more governance across it and have more understanding about how they build a future with it, then I think they're looking more towards IBM and the leadership that we've shown in AI over the last years.
And that makes sense because IBM is such a sort of diversified technology company from my perception, and because it's got that consulting history, that pedigree, I guess you can position IBM as being well positioned to sort of stitch together emerging sort of technological trends and make sense of them. Is that?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
That's like your sales pitch.
Yeah, well,
have I got a job?
I might just write that down. I'll get the recording. But I think if you're looking at it kind of broadly, like we're interested on the technology side of building kind of leading edge technologies. So we've had a focus since probably around 2018 when the push was made to acquire Red Hat. And certainly in the last 5 years, we've made, I think, about 70 acquisitions right across the portfolio in order to bolster capabilities of data acquisition, data streaming, data management, AI model building, AI model management and orchestration, and then agentic AI as well. And that whole piece, so the whole platform from top to bottom. Now, each part is modular, so you might have your own technologies that you have from other companies, but the different parts are modular. We've brought in a lot of these acquisitions because we've seen that it's difficult to build, it's difficult to deploy, even more so. It's difficult to build a business case for each of the use cases.
Yeah.
And it's difficult to monitor those after you go live for your kind of day 2 operations, right?
So I don't know if you saw, there was a study, I think we mentioned it on the pod a little while back, there was a study I read about where some very high proportion of enterprise AI deployments had just, I don't think this was a precise quote, but had resulted in fuck all.
Yeah, so I think that was the MIT study.
That's right.
From last year. So I think they came up with 90 or 95%.
Yeah.
Now we've seen better results than that, but normally it comes down to a few things, right? So first of all, did you do the business case? Because when you launch these use cases, you find out that the LLMs are very resource intensive, or you find out that the licensing is very expensive, all the hardware and other costs that you have that go with it all add up. And it's the scale that catches you, because the first few weeks is fine, and then you try to roll it out across 20 million subscribers, and all of a sudden, ouch, then you've got a challenge. So you have to do that kind of business case first. That's one of the areas. But then you're going to follow up on that, you're going to come up with issues around governance, where everybody talks about governance, and the word, I don't like the fact that they're using a word that was associated with slowing things down, because it actually speeds it up. Because if you don't have it, what happens is you get to the end point where you have a great use case, excellent technology, and your legal teams and others say, well, hang on, does this meet the needs of the EU AI Act?
Yeah.
And they say, we think so. And that's not good enough, right? So what you need is technology to govern that. But governance is something you consider at the beginning. So I often use the analogy of a car, right? So if you've got good brakes, you can go fast. If you don't upgrade your brakes, there's no point in going faster. You might not stop, right? So you constantly have to make sure that the things that allow you to progress, without everybody asking you for, because governance isn't about give me an update, promise me it won't fail. It's about actually being confident in the technology and using technology to do that, as well as using oversight.
Knowing that you can go all in on it because all the pieces are in place. And per your analogy, I think the brakes are probably my favourite part of a car, for obvious
you do
reasons.
Emergency stops, do you?
Well, I just like to know that I'm not committed. I don't know if you remember, like when you were learning to drive, one of the things that used to make me anxious when I put my foot on the accelerator is this feeling like I've got this point of no return. And then you suddenly have that revelation that you can brake loads more quickly and you can accelerate, and you're like, all right, it's not such a big commitment to this speed. So anyway, I like the analogy.
I was wondering, the MIT study that came out last year, and I think people have tried to pick that apart a bit, but a lot of the deployment of AI that's come since 2022, which I think is when ChatGPT came out, and then all the conversation started about generative AI, seems to have been quite there's a jumping on the bandwagon element of it, isn't there? And I wonder whether some of these organisations have kind of piled into it without really thinking about, with the certain organisations we can mention here, Scott, that maybe we won't, but just sort of jumping into it in a big way and saying you must take advantage of AI, make sure you use it in your everyday activities, without really sort of thinking about how are you going to use it and what's the benefit.
Well, I've got some other thoughts.
What are you trying to get out of this?
I've got some other thoughts about that company that will remain nameless. Is I think sometimes these people are asked to do it because they're actually asking their workforce to feed the LLM.
Right.
So it may or may not be useful, and we as journalists, I think you're a fairly regular listener, Owen.
Yes, I am.
You may have heard us bitching and moaning about AI and basically raging against being Luddites about it.
It does cause me to giggle a bit.
And by the way, feel free to call us out on any of that. But I think sometimes when people are asked to use it, yes, it may be a useful tool. I don't think it's a particularly useful tool for me, although if I was doing a bit more research and investigation and more deep news analysis, maybe I would use it more. But on the flip side, companies presumably want their workforce to be feeding their local LLM or whatever their company specific layer on the top of it is to make it more useful. So that's just my thought.
I know, but that's true. I agree with that, but I still think there's this sort of what are you getting out of it productivity-wise?
Yeah,
and
totally.
There's this massive disconnect at the moment, which I think is like a much bigger conversation than this, about the big companies like Nvidia and the hyperscalers doing arguably quite well out of some of this, but there's not been that productivity boost so far. You look at GDP growth, you look at a lot of other sectors of the economy, there's not this kind of flow through like where everybody's doing wonderfully out of AI. No one is actually really, apart from Nvidia, it seems, And
so I could add something there. So first of all, you're right. Everybody kind of jumped in and said, I need to be using this. I need to try it out. And as organizations did that, sometimes it was at an individual level, but it was also at an organization level where certain departments were trying to create different use cases, etc. And it was a lot of trial and error. Now, there's nothing wrong with exploring technology. But the challenge does come when you want to go into production. It's a very different story when you add scale, security, governance, legal, potential. That's where it becomes significant, right? That you've actually planned this thing out properly. There's also another side of it. I mean, we embraced the technology ourselves. I mean, we said about 3 years ago or 2.5 years ago that we were going to look at our whole structure, but we were not going to say, everybody go use AI. It was look at the way you do your job today and see where AI can help that. So where you see blockers, where you see delays, where you see repetition, let's identify those. So every department actually was tasked with it. And this came from the CEO down.
Right.
And then was kind of cadence from the bottom up to say, what are we looking at? And everybody had the permission, and that's important, to actually spend time doing this. So we even did we had an annual event where everybody would use Watson X or AI technologies in order to build, capabilities and see if it could help. So people were building things to get sign off on orders quicker and procurement quicker and speed up the way we do expenses. Just nice, simple things.
See, that all makes sense. And per some of the times when we've bitched and moaned about AI and not needing it, I'll speak only for myself, although I suspect Ian's not a million miles away. As writers, we've got a very specific job function, and it's not bureaucratic at all, and it's not very collaborative. So I think a lot of the things where I bet AI can reduce a lot of friction, can get rid of a lot of the sort of busy work and the bollocks that people have to put up with in a corporate environment, we just don't experience.
No, I think
it's hard for me to relate
different
to it.
So I think one of the most important things that you have is your opinion, right? And your experience. So you have to keep that. So like when or if you're using AI, you need to put all of that on the page first. And then you can ask, how should I structure this? Correct repetition or, whatever it might be that you want to do with it, right?
My grammar's perfect, thank you very much.
I know, it's just an example. So that's important, right? That you start with all your own ideas. I think as an organization then across IBM, we've actually made productivity gains of 4.5 billion over that 2.5, 3 year period.
Right.
And that's right across functions of HR, of supply chain management, order management.
I'm curious how that's measured. Obviously, I don't expect you to get into the weeds on it, but I'm sure it's done properly and in an auditable way. But sometimes productivity as a concept is hard. I mean, is it just like revenue per capita or something? How does one go about gauging productivity?
So there are different ways. So some of it is about kind of time to market with new offerings. Sometimes it's around savings that you make operationally.
Yes,
sometimes it's around, if you think about procurement, right? So if you can use AI and structure your prompts really accurately and have the right enterprise level AI that you can trust the output of, and it's not trained on the internet, right? It's a proper model based on all the data that you know what it's based on.
Yeah.
Then you can try, and it's got all of your information, it's got all of your contracts. Then it can look across all of those and say, when I look across all countries, I think with this vendor we're paying 3 different prices, or maybe 15, or maybe 100. Right? So why is that? Right? So
you can rationalize all that.
Yeah, and it's, why don't we buy through a centralized point, or why don't we do this? And so you change the way you do business. I mean, the other side of it is that you'd normally go through, order processes, looking for approvals and so you can set it up so that it has certain levels of pre-approval, and it flags what's not meeting the requirement really easily from a contract, saying, look, this purchase doesn't meet with our needs of this particular requirement.
Right.
So
but it's not linked to because when people throw that out to a general public, they go, does that mean you've cut like loads of jobs? That's the fear, isn't it? Obviously, if you start talking about, we've realised 4.5 billion or whatever it is, but you wouldn't sort of necessarily. And that's often how it gets presented in telecom.
It will sometimes mean that things will change for sure. I mean, there's no kind of. I mean, if you can do something, with AI that requires less people, generally what happens is that's a repetitive task, which isn't the real adding value. So the way I think about it would be, if you're, building products, and you start using AI to build those products, you can build those products much faster. We released an IDE last year called Bob, and you can build...
What's an IDE?
So what you're looking at is a development environment for your coders, right? So they're looking at building their code, but they're using basically an assistant. And that assistant is saying to them, what are you trying to build? And you can tell it, and it can start to look at the industry standards that are associated with that.
I see.
Any security risks that you might be building into your code. So it's starting to help. Now,
you can loads of stuff that you might have had to make a note for yourself to deal with. It can go off and at least give you a head start on it.
Or you can do it in kind of an online mode. So while you're typing, it's kind of going, I wouldn't do that.
Oh shit! I can imagine. Ian, can you imagine that? While you're writing, the computer going, nah, I think you're barking up the wrong tree there.
I mean that would get turned off immediately.
But if you set the criteria, so what you're generally doing is you might be putting in your code and saying, look, go through this. Tell me, I want to upgrade this from Java 8 to Java 21.
Right.
What will I need to do? So it'll actually create a design plan. It'll map it all out. It'll read the code. It'll say, right, so to change it, you could do all of these steps. However, these particular pieces of code here could be run in parallel instead of in sequence, or these particular piece of code here are going to create a security challenge.
Right. Obviously, when I'm working with Java or Python, I wouldn't like it so much.
So like that's an example where that productivity, right, is really good. If you think about building products, there's normally a backlog of roadmap that you're trying to build, right? You often talk to people who are building products, and they've got roadmaps, and they're saying, this is how much we can fit into this space of time.
And what are
they can now increase that.
What are the bottlenecks for that? Just like the coding,
it's the number of coders, and the productivity that they can provide.
So I mean, you can produce a lot more code in a lot more amount of time.
And you can test it more against security issues, but you can also test it, against performance issues. And you can look at your costs, etc. And so you can do all of that analysis.
Is there a connection yet between? Because if you could produce a lot more cars a lot more quickly, back in the days when people were buying cars very, rapidly, sales are going to go up. But is there a measure between if we can generate these software products much more much more speedily that we're selling to our customers, then there's a kind of link to revenue growth as well? Or
you would expect that, but you'd also expect that it could increase, customer satisfaction where they're waiting for different new features and functionality that they've requested, or that the software is now far more reliable with less security risks, etc. So, the resilience is better. So you've improved the product, you're getting it out quicker, and you can create, more of it that way.
Is there anyone else doing those sorts of... Because I was just moaning about there doesn't seem to have been that great link with productivity. And obviously IBM has done these studies and come out with some numbers about it. But are you aware of anybody else doing that? I mean, are there any telcos that do this? Because whenever it gets discussed in the telco sector, it's always... I mean, I go on about job cuts a lot, but I sense that the job cuts that have happened in telecom over the last sort of 5 to 10 years are not really to do with AI. And they get presented these days as we get CEOs on calls saying AI will allow us to... I mean, BT's quite public about this. We'll go down to a much smaller workforce in the future, and AI will be partly to do with that. But I don't hear anybody coming out with these sorts of numbers and saying it's helping them in that way.
It's significant, and we wanted to prove it for ourselves because we also wanted to release these technologies into other people's enterprises. Why would you not trial them on your own? For instance, on the network
eating
side,
your dog food, isn't it, or something?
Exactly. You're drinking your own champagne.
Yeah, that's the nicer one. Yeah. Why would you eat your own dog food? It's a bit.
Why would you come up with a silly
but
analogy?
people use that, don't they?
They do use this.
I've never
Not a
heard
great one.
It's used.
Is that one of those American things,
It's like choking,
opening the kimono or one throat to choke?
Yeah.
Americans have a lot of very colourful analogies they use in a corporate environment.
I think weird's the word you're looking for.
I know, I was being nice. I remember first time I heard that open the kimono, I was actually doing a face-to-face interview at Mobile World Congress, and the guy was being very on message, and he goes, you just wait till we open the kimono. And I was like, oh, I don't think I can wait. And I got all carry on film about it, and I think it was completely lost on him. He was like, what's this fucking limey talking about? But,
matron.
Yeah, exactly. Your kimono. Anyway, sorry. But
there's pills kicking in.
Yes, I know. Jesus Christ.
But to answer your question, yes. I mean, telcos are looking at this right across the board. We obviously work. I focused on the telco industry, but we work across many industries, and I often assist with those discussions as well. And we would see that people are looking across very similar departments. So they're looking at HR, they're looking at supply chain management, order management, and many other kind of legal, finance, etc., where there's a lot of repetitive tasks that are unnecessary, and that frees up the innovation, right? So they're definitely getting a lot of productivity. So what we've done, for instance, is with the kind of Watson X Orchestrate portfolio, which is looking at how you build agents to help to provide a business kind of use case around a certain area. You'd have multiple agents, multiple LLMs, small language models, and they would be put in place, as accelerators. So you could actually go to these businesses and put it in as an accelerator and say, all you need to do is put in your own HR regulations and requirements and data, etc., and this is ready to go.
I mean, that does sound very powerful. I guess, again, you will have heard us on the podcast. We start panicking when things get more automated and more agentic about the loss of control.
Sure.
But then I guess that goes full circle back to your point about governance and having good brakes on the car and all that sort of thing.
It's also ethics, right? So we set up an ethics team. I can't remember what date it was. I think it was around 2018. And that team is still active today, and it's made up of people from all across the business. So it's not just people in sales or just people in product or just people in legal or something.
Yeah, because everyone's got their own incentive structure.
But it's also that everybody has their own opinions about what's ethical and what's not. And that helps drive what we do to make sure that it's responsible as well. And I think that's a big thing. I mean, I think it was Christine Montgomery was our VP for privacy and AI back in the day when ChatGPT was released. And all of the big tech companies were asked to go, before the Senate and do one of those hearings. And she went in representing IBM, and she was shocked that, like, with the level of questions, and that people didn't understand, the problems, but also that maybe not everybody was ready for how you govern across the responsibility kind of matrix that's required for.
And that's where some of the big AI cheerleaders and utopians have to cool their jets a little bit, because if they do it too much, regular people, whether it's politicians or just normies, just living their lives, they're entitled to get a little bit anxious when this roller coaster seems to be going so much quicker than they can get their head around. I mean, I think I'm not in any way justifying it, but I think just this week, Sam Altman, someone attacked his house.
Wow.
And I don't know what the motivation is, but it's easy to assume that it was someone who's freaked out by AI.
Well, there's quite a big backlash against it in America at the moment. Apparently the resistance to AI is higher in America than it is in other parts of the world.
I know, which is interesting, isn't it?
Well, I think some of it's probably because the jobs market's a bit more volatile there anyway, and it's easy to get rid of people. And
they're obviously ahead of the game.
And also they're very. I mean, you talk about ethics and regulation, but I think, like, if you go back a few years, and that was like a very big focus in AI. Like, we need to be quite careful about how this gets done, and even the founders themselves, like Demis Hassabis and Sam Altman, were very concerned about, not aligning themselves with big tech companies who are pushing for profits and trying to keep it under their own control. I mean, that's all completely changed. We've got a US president who just wants to sort of take advantage of it as much as possible and doesn't believe in regulating it. And the position of the UK government has gone from Rishi Sunak wanting to be a leader in AI regulation to Keir Starmer just sort of pinning his hopes on the fact that Nvidia and Microsoft could come and inject loads of money into the economy, and let's not really worry about, there's all this sort of swing, I think, towards we don't want to be too cautious and get left behind.
It's a real high wire act.
It's a high wire act, because I agree, I get that, but at the same time, if this is, you were referring to the Sam Altman having stuff, and there was an Economist article about.
Is that the one you shared?
Yeah, the latest models now, the stuff that's coming out of Anthropic and everything.
Oh, I've got a tangent lined up for that.
They're like incredibly worrying, I think, because they've got to a point where they consider spot security flaws that would allow them to.
I wrote about that.
It's almost like quantum. It's like we can use this to kind of break any kind of level of encryption now. And I think who was it? Who's the guy who's behind Anthropic?
Dario
Amodei was saying. I mean, it's almost like they're setting themselves up to be the regulators, aren't they? This can't be released to the general public. I've decided I'm the person who needs to make a decision on this.
Yeah, what I would say is, I mean, the thing that they did do was they set up Glasswing and they released it to all the other vendors, and that's kind of moving. I'm not saying that they're moving towards it, but it is kind of it is moving towards kind of like an open source sort of scenario where you need to give everybody access so that they can protect themselves against the capabilities as much as enjoy the benefits of it at the same time.
Well, I thought of Ian when I was writing. So I wrote a piece, this is dated April the 8th, and we're recording it on the 17th. So there we are. Even my maths can say that was 9 days ago. And it said, Anthropic reckons its new model has cracked cybersecurity. And it was talking about that Glasswing thing. I even nicked a photo of a Glasswing off Wikipedia, which is a type of butterfly that's got C3 wings. But the thing behind it, the thing that made me think of you, Ian, is that he was going, look, we've come up with this thing called Mythos.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah,
this new sort of incremental step up in our model.
The Economist's cover story this week.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And we're going, and they're going, Mythos is so good that we don't even fucking release a thing.
That's right.
And then I thought of you, one time we were talking on the pod, and there was another Dario Amodei thing where he was coming up with some existential, it's become self-aware and it's about to turn into Terminator.
Skynet,
yeah. And you were going,
that would come up eventually.
Yeah, that's a matter of inevitability.
Self-aware.
Self-aware.
Yeah.
And I mean, Pierre used to throw in a little Terminator sound effect.
Yeah, he's still doing those.
Yeah.
It's too on the nose now.
Yeah, it's too much of a cliche.
Right, okay. I don't mind cliches, as regular listeners will attest. But then you were going, oh, he's just saying that to big it up, to make it seem like a bigger deal than it is. And I thought that's a really good point. And then so I thought of that when he was talking about Mythos. But it looks like quite a lot of other people sort of believe that claim.
Right.
It's like that Google guy, right? The whistleblower who was like, was he like a paid guy? It's like, just go out and press.
It's hard to know.
We'll give you some money. Just
but him saying that, I mean, it's going to make Trump and his sort of military helpers want to make use of this even more, isn't it?
Every proclamation like that does seem to add to the sense of jeopardy and urgency and sort of military-industrial complex mania around the whole thing. And, again, it comes back to some of the stuff you were talking about involving guardrails and all that sort of thing. Yep. I mean, it's going to be fascinating to see how big tech and big government coexist on this stuff, because we had the other thing with Anthropic, didn't we, with them trying to say you can't use Claude to blow up primary schools or whatever, and they went, we'll use it what the fuck we want, and then there was a big tiff between the US government and Anthropic over that. So I think there's going to be all sorts of tensions there. I don't know if I have a question, and that was a bit of a ramble.
I think one of the areas that we were talking at the beginning around kind of the IBM strategy. So, one of the areas is there's obviously the LLMs, right? There's the models themselves, and there's a good few players building very large and capable models in that area, kind of called frontier models or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
And that's a huge investment. And there's a number of them, and in the end, some of them will be very successful. What we're kind of seeing is that there's a cost performance decision to be made as well. So and then there's open source, where there's a lot of models which are available that you might want to try out on different.
China's doing especially well,
and they're doing very well there, and we have models there as well. We put our Granite models into open source. We have our time series models in there, which we use a lot in the network area. And a lot of people are using it. It's one of the most popular models on there. It's for a time series model. It's kind of bewildering to see how many people are using it.
So IBM has its own models, but we wouldn't call them LLMs, or would we?
Well, you would originally, but they're actually, what's popular is like this. They're kind of like in the 100 billion, 70 billion kind of range and parameter size.
Right.
But they go right down to like 3 billion. And then the time series models are like 100 to 1 million parameters, and what that means is that you can run them on
they're more
regular
for
hardware.
telecom networks.
Yeah, exactly. So you can run them on more specific tasks.
I see.
So I mean, if you're in a network operations center, most likely you don't need to know the history of the world. You don't need to know anything about the animals encyclopedias. You don't need all of that stuff, and you don't need to know all of the context associated with it. So that removes quite a lot of heavy bulk, right? So we do a lot of tuning with customers around the LLMs that we have and others to make them more accurate.
Those like more slimline models, the ones that have got, I think you said 3 billion. It goes down to. Would you use like GPUs to train those, or could those be done on other hardware platforms?
For training purposes, just for speed, you probably would.
Yeah.
But what's good is that when you're doing retraining or when you're doing tuning and stuff like that, then you can be, and most importantly for inference, is that you can run them on much smaller hardware footprint, which means that if you are on GPUs, it'll be using a lot less, and if you are on other forms of hardware, it could still work. And right down to when you want to put it on your device or you want to put it on your local laptops, etc., then you're going to need these very small models.
Yeah.
And they'll have specific tasks. And that's kind of the way we see is that you're going to have lots of different models from different vendors and open source and your own.
The reason I ask is, and it's getting into a bit of a tangent that I don't think we should go into because we talk about it all the time, but this sort of AI RAN discussion to some extent, the idea of putting GPUs into cell sites even, which I know there's a certain amount of skepticism about, and some people are quite keen on it, but I know Ericsson, when I've talked to them about it, they seem to be quite. They mention this parameters issue and the fact that you need to get a quick response as well for the time TTI.
Time to token,
yeah. And it's like you can't have big models in the RAN. Basically, you wouldn't use that, and therefore it's sort of a bit inappropriate to sort of think about GPUs. But that's kind of where my question was coming from.
So I think there's probably a few things in there. I mean, first of all, there's the business case to do any of it, right? So if you're building AI to improve the RAN, then you're going to have specific models that are built specifically for that, based on the likes of time series data. And then you might have a reasoning model, which is specifically trained around telecoms and telecoms knowledge and your vendors' documents, your trouble tickets, etc., whatever it might be that you need to make decisions with. So you're going to have your reasoning models, your language models, and then you're going to have to orchestrate across all of that. So you're going to have that kind of control of these agents that are picked to do certain tasks, and you're going to have to choose the right model that's commensurate with the requirement, right? So it's going to have a cost and it's going to have a performance that you need. So if you want to be right first time, you might go for a bigger model. If you want to try 2 different models, or if you know that it's about a specific task, you're going to choose the smaller model because it's cheaper, right? And you get the right performance that you need from it.
And that's one of the big narratives that goes on around the topic that Ian just flagged up is, no one wants to pay for more than they need.
That's it.
You want that just-in-time, optimal
based
resource.
on the business requirement, and does it pay for itself, right? So if you're building that capability into the cell or the tower, then at that level there has to be a business case for it. Now that business case can be based on, does it actually help me with my network to save on spectrum, which is hugely expensive? Then that could pay for it, right? How many GPUs can it pay for? That's another question, and that's in the business case. Or do I run it on something that's, maybe it's AMD, or maybe it's another provider, or maybe it's a chip that we're designing. Intel, absolutely.
Granite Rapids is pretty capable these days, it seems, of doing some of the AI stuff anyway. So,
and there's a lot of players are focusing very much on, AI inference. So, they're the kind of, you're not training the model out there necessarily, or you're not building the model out there. You're just using the inference. So
because we were talking about ChatGPT coming along in 2022, and it was like a bit of a kind of wake up moment for everybody. Like, oh my God, AI is suddenly around, even though it had been. I mean, IBM would tell anybody that AI had been around for a lot longer than that. But I'm just wondering what it meant for IBM at the time. Did it? Because obviously, IBM wasn't a part of that conversation. It was Sam Altman, and I think we've talked about this on the pod. But the transformer concept itself seems to have been invented by some guys at Google working on the Translate team.
Put on a shelf for a while.
Put on the shelf, and then somebody else ran with it. But did it involve any? You had Watson there. Did it involve any kind of strategic redirection within IBM? What did it mean for kind of IBM generally? All of that.
So my recollection of it is that we were already working on that. But we wouldn't release something as nascent as that, because our focus is enterprise. So it's going to be telecoms, it's going to be government, it's going to be finance. They don't want to see you releasing a model that gives you crazy answers. Remember the early days, it was super impressive, right? Everybody was impressed until it went, and gave you a different answer.
It almost made him more impressive because it was kind of funny.
It was funny.
Why is it telling me to leave my wife?
But IBM aren't funny.
No, you don't want that when you're in a telco. It's something telling you to leave your wife.
IBM's not a laughing matter.
It's no laughing matter, no. So we take these things very seriously.
That's true. I imagine in commercial settings, they don't want you cracking jokes. They're like, look, this is fucking serious. There's a lot of money involved here.
Exactly.
Can you just focus?
But the sort of transformer concept itself was something that like IBM people themselves would have been conscious of, I'm guessing, before all this came out, and doing stuff to move Watson in that sort of direction. Is that?
And they actually released the governance platform first,
right?
And said, right, we'll release the AI platform straight away after. So we had the WatsonX.governance came out, and then WatsonX.ai.
So is Watson broadly the AI brand for
WatsonX?
WatsonX
is broadly the brand, which is different from the original Watson, which was more of a monolithic solution. Now what we've done is we've learned from that and said, no, this needs to be very modular, because people are going to want to bring in their own models. They're going to want to use somebody else's governance or our governance, somebody else's AI model creation unit or ours, somebody else's orchestration platform or ours.
So WatsonX is designed to allow you to kind of slot different elements.
Yeah, so you can start from data collection to grabbing data and federated cases. You can bring it up to processing that data, changing the formats of that data to make it more business acceptable or ready for model use. You can then go through the building of models, the management of those models in a life cycle. and then up to governance and control. So you actually get to like an agentic layer now. Over the last year or so, there's a lot on agents. We would have done a lot of work last year at IBM, I think in May last year, around agents, showing the possibilities. But of course, when your business gets more developed in the AI world, you're going to want to reuse agents that you build. I mean, if one is doing, very simplistic summarization, or if one of them is calculating forecasts for, financial transactions or contract management, then you don't want to create multiples of that. You want to reuse it. So if order management need to do something that wants to check your contract, then they go to the contract management agent. And so what happens now is that you have the connections between all of these that become really important, and they mightn't be sitting in the same building. Right. So networks come into play. But also you have policies that come into play. So you need to be able to manage and verify identities of tokens, identities of the user that's using those, and the application that's using those, right across all these areas. So it starts to get complex, but it's complex for a reason, because that's how you have control and how you manage it. Because if something goes wrong, everybody says, what happened? You can't just say, well, the agents did stuff. You need to be able to say, no, this agent failed. And a lot of the acquisitions, I was talking to Scott about earlier, would have been brought in to look at cloud, to find issues, to look at applications, to look at the microservices within those applications, and find out, which microservice is actually congested. It's not the whole application, it's this microservice. So I might want to move that microservice to another part of the cloud, or to another cloud. And that's where, the whole, story with Red Hat comes in, is that, Arvind, our CEO, he was, I think, head of software at the time. He had this vision that, and at the time people thought that, you would go to one cloud provider and you would put all of your applications and your workloads in there.
Yeah.
But his idea was that, no, they won't. It's going to be multi-cloud.
Yeah.
It's going to be hybrid cloud. Some people are going to have older equipment on-prem. Some people are going to want new equipment that they have to have on-prem. And some people are going to use Google, and they're going to use AWS, and they're going to use Microsoft and IBM and whoever. So actually that layer is now more important than having the cloud. It's actually
the Red Hat layer.
The Red Hat layer.
Yeah.
So that's why, it was a significant price, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
There was a lot of people. He has come out and said, I think about 80% of people were against it.
Right.
At the time, at certain meetings that he was at. So he was, pushing hard.
Anyway.
And he said, no, this is, I can envision the future, and we can do this, and we can build it and make it better.
Well,
so
another thing, I was just, I'm the only one of the three of us who has his laptop open. I sometimes go off on little research tangents.
Okay.
And I was looking at IBM share price.
Yeah.
Partly just to remind myself, I'm sure everyone's aware that IBM's a very venerable company. When was it formed? I think we've probably got it here.
1850.
Was it?
18,
No.
It was later in the 1800s.
No, but it was like...
No, it was
in the 40s?
It's about 113, 114 years, is it?
Fucking hell. Oh, yeah, 1911. There we are.
There you go.
wow.
Yeah.
Anyway, it says here, this is just in the search engine.
I was slightly joking when I said 1850. I didn't realise it was as old as 19.
I know, no, it's properly old.
Oh, wow.
It was founded in 1911 as the Computing Tabulating Recording Company. So, whereas IBM, I think, originally stood for International Business Machines, was it?
Yeah.
That must have sounded in 1911 to have a company called the Computing Tabulating Recording. It must have sounded really futuristic, mustn't it?
And it was.
Yeah. Well, computing as a word in 1911.
Totally. Yeah.
I don't know when people who are those founders that always get GPUs named after them, like Ada
Carnegie
Lovelace or something, or
You're thinking about
Grace
people like Grace Hopper.
Yeah,
No, she's much more recent than that.
Oh, okay.
She was in the Navy, wasn't she? The US Navy. And
anyway, the reason I went down that rabbit hole was just to remind myself how old it is, and how much how many times it's had to reinvent itself over the years.
Well, that's been the key. You have to. If you're a big company like that, you have to ask yourself very serious questions the whole time. And that's why, we had a pivot. Probably I think it was around 2015. We had been researching quantum computing for quite a while, but there was a pivot to say, actually, this looks like something we need to really, do. We need to lead this. We can lead this. and that's an area where we're really confident about the future.
I saw
that's good, actually.
At NWC, the IBM had some computers, quantum computers on display. That was really cool.
Yeah, we were joking that the stand was nearly lopsided because everybody was gathered around the
Just
quantum computers. Yeah.
Well, I'm a quantum skeptic.
Okay.
Only in so
So you
much
say
as
expert.
He's a quantum ignorant.
so I could teach you a fucking thing or two about quantum. No, far
Good.
from it.
Yeah.
No, I'm a skeptic not because
Can only be one
not
thing at
because
a
I
time.
understand the technology. Yeah, exactly. Because it's too difficult for me to get my head round, so I just don't believe in it. No.
Yeah.
No, just it's more the immediacy of it. I'm sure it's massively consequential. It's just when people talk it up in the short term, that's where I'm skeptical. But maybe you can correct me on that.
Sure. So, I mean, our time frame at the moment is 3 to 4 years. We'll be like selling them at some level of scale.
Do they still have to be at like absolute zero to work? Or something like
And that sounds really difficult, but it's not. Because the refrigeration unit, actually most of what you would have seen on the stand is refrigeration. And trying to control the external world from interfering with the qubits. So qubits. So down on the bottom of all of that quantum computer, there's a chip, and it's in that chip that you have these qubits that you're able to use to process. So instead of using bits, you're using qubits, and the beauty of the qubit is it's far more powerful because if you think about a bit being 1 or 0. Then a qubit can be, 1 or 0 or a probability
in between.
And I know it starts to get difficult.
Yeah, the
quantum mechanics is
stuff. And again, I know nothing about it, but I know enough to know that it's all about the things not being binary.
Yeah. So if you were to think about the amount of processing that you're doing on a computer today. So if you have your 8 bits and you have 256 different things that can be, right? In ones and zeros, that's your number of combinations. Then it has to feed one of those in and compute against it. But with a quantum computer, it can be all of those, 256, at the same time.
Right.
So it's parallel.
It's just massively parallel.
And what you're doing is you're
steroids.
trying to control the performance of the output to be as accurate as possible. So what you end up with is more accuracy and a tiny amount of qubits compared to, because when you get to about 100 manageable qubits, to do the same processing with bits kind of is like I'd need every atom in the world to do it. All right, so it grows very quickly. The hard stuff is getting the error correction right, because the reason you freeze it to, I think it's 15 millikelvin, which is just above 0.
Yeah,
the reason you get it down to that is you're trying to stop anything from interfering with it. You want to release or reduce the energy. So at that point, you're able to interact with them to make them into a circuit, and that circuit then is built to create an output. So it's a little bit like creating NOT and AND gates, but a bit more complex. But but we have a whole computing platform which we released in 2015.
And you said that it's going to be commercial like by the end of the decade.
Yeah, that's the current time frame. We're building the fabrication plants in New York at the moment. Yeah.
Shit.
But the applications of it, I mean, it sounds like the way you're describing it's a huge increase in sort of capacity and computational ability.
Yeah, and it's not the same as normal computation. So we kind of look at it as quantum-led high performance computing. So what you're bringing together is a hybrid of supercomputing or normal computing with quantum computing. And the idea of that is that there's certain types of tasks which currently are intractable. You can't do those calculations now. And they can be done with a quantum computer, right? So if you're looking at material science, so if you're looking to get a better battery for your phone, you go, surely there's something that can last longer than this or will charge faster. You have to, if you want to be really quick about this, currently, a lot of people are doing testing new molecules and structures of molecules to try and do that's very time consuming. But if you can get a quantum computer to say these are the top 10, things. I've done it and I found it. Try this one.
So do it in a fraction.
It's far more accurate because it's able to mimic that quantum state that the actual battery atoms are in.
Yep.
So it's looking at those molecules and it's able to look at that state. Whereas if you were to do that with a computer today, it would let you down badly once you go above.
It would just run for ages trying to figure it out.
Could be for millennia. Yeah.
I have a.
Or never. I mean, for large molecules.
And I just don't have millennia at this stage of my life.
No. So it's very powerful.
But with your back.
If you look at if you look at material science, if you look at banking, we were working with HSBC. They were looking at a type of transaction that they wanted to forecast the right price for, and we added 34% more accuracy on that. Now that was an enormous jump. They use supercomputers normally for this kind of thing, but because it's able to look at all the probabilities of all the prices and all the variables in the market at the same time, it was able to come back with that type of an answer. So they were very impressed with that. Now a lot of companies are working with us, like car companies and some telecom kind of mobile device kind of vendors and other vendors who were in telco, because they're looking at the materials part of it, but they're also looking at the processing part of it. So if you're looking in the telecom world at RF spectrum and what are the possibilities for coverage and what I build with it, quantum computing might offer a far better solution. And it might be a lot cheaper in the end because you actually don't need to use that much of it to process those types of large cases.
That's where I understand more advanced computing definitely plays a role in wireless networks. Is as you're using sort of less optimal bits of spectrum, you need more and more technology and processing and cleverness to make the best of it.
Yeah.
So
how do you judge all the impacts?
Sorry, I have a question because you mentioned banking.
Yeah.
And you said it would be commercialized by the end of the decade. Then how is Bitcoin still a thing? Like, because I asked somebody on the stand, an IBM person, if that could technically, break the blockchain, and he said yes. So I don't.
Well, yeah, it depends on the encryption, right? So that's back to a different thing, which is when we were researching quantum computing, the same people, very, very clever people, were able to see that, hey, this is a problem for RSA security, right? Because it's going to break it in minutes, right? So
that's the fear, isn't it? That
it's
whoever wins this race. No, but it is. That has been the big sort of news headline that whoever wins this race first can basically break into every computer, and we're all screwed.
So what we did was we created a number of different algorithms which you can use for your encryption that quantum computers hate.
Right.
Right. But normal computers can still manage but can't break either, right? So we released a lot of them to NIST, and they took those in, and 3 of the 4 that are recommended across the world were built by IBM as well. So that they're in open source, they're available for anybody to use, right? So we do a lot of work with companies as well now to do assessments. So we try to automate the assessments and discovery across all of their different platforms,
protecting it from
the potential of quantum computing.
Right.
Yeah. So it's that helps to identify all of those, and then we can start looking at the prioritization and fix all of those encryption issues before they become a problem. But it is a bit of a race, because if you take a copy of the data today, you could unencrypt that in 5 years' time.
Isn't that what people are doing? Breaking in, taking copies of it.
That's the fear, certainly, yeah. So that's why we're kind of saying, look, it's not really a matter of you have to wait for the quantum computer. It's maybe already too late, right? So you don't want to do scaremongering.
We just won't know about it for another 6-7 years or whatever. And all of a sudden,
it's like when they catch athletes decades later.
Yeah.
So I think just from a reality perspective, so we put quantum computing on the cloud in 2015, so anybody could use it, using Qiskit, the IDE for building the circuits in quantum computing, and we're seeing a huge take up in that, and we do a lot of classes, summer classes and stuff like that for it. So it's a really good area, I think, for younger people to get into, I think, because that area of computing will be interesting for sure. But then the other thing on the telecom side is we have a partnership with Cisco, where we're looking at kind of quantum internet. So this is the idea of having communication across longer distances. So now we have to use those entangled
quantum entanglement theory.
Use the quantum entanglement, but over distance, and that's a bigger. That's a bigger.
Sounds scary.
That's to do with things like teleportation.
Maybe one for the pub later.
I could do with some fucking teleportation technology right now.
We're going too far.
That's the idea of like you alter the state of one atom and one particle, and in another part of the universe,
the other one state is immediately known. I'm not going to say it transfers information, that would break the laws of physics, but the other one is immediately known due to the observation.
Yeah.
But it's not the observation itself; it's just the fact that you've interfered with it to the point of seeing what it is. Then now you know what the other one is.
Wow, this is probably science fiction shit.
But if you do have internet and security based on that, like quantum key distribution, stuff like that, then nobody can break it, because as soon as they do anything to look at it, they actually break it.
And that was why. That was the source of my skepticism when people have pitched this stuff to me before. It sounded like a bit of an upsell on a potential problem. I mean, I know it's not analogous, but things like the Y2K spring to mind, where everyone's going, well, you better invest loads of money in this because it might happen. And that's where my skepticism was coming from. But it sounds like...
No, this is a real thing, though.
Exactly.
The way I would put it is that this used to be a science problem. Now it's an engineering problem on how accurate, how small, how, consumable can this be. So that's what they're working on, is trying to get the error rates down. It's kind of like, I mean, if you looked at a normal computer, you might be running at 3 gigahertz. If you move it up to 4 gigahertz, it's faster, but there's more errors, right? So we're trying to, work, like error rates are something that we've kind of managed by this stage. So nobody talks about that in computing anymore.
Who are the guys who are... Because you were saying you expect to maybe be selling some of this stuff in the next 3 or 4 years, but who are the other big players in the quantum? I mean, I was aware of IBM being very heavily involved in this, and to a much smaller degree, I think. And saying that without hopefully insulting them. I know BT takes an interest in it, and they have a couple of quite sort of brainy people there who just do quantum stuff at Industrial Park.
Do some work with Vodafone as well.
Right.
Yeah.
But on maybe just
Many
outside
others.
telecom as well, who are the kind of big... Has AI been unleashed on this, by the way, as well? Like, do you get
that? By the way, just quickly before you answer, the combination of like Anthropic talking about mythos, and then this quantum stuff that he was talking about. I mean, it's making me want to just dig a hole in my garden and just fucking power.
Okay, well, look at it this way now. All right, we'll change the tone a little bit. If you think about medicines, we go through years and years and years of testing,
protein folding and all that sort of.
And exactly, right. Then that's really complex stuff that quantum computing is likely to be very good at. So
Indeed.
it's going to speed up a lot of
and AI is apparently already really good for some diagnostic stuff.
Can you just crack nuclear fusion? Because that would be really nice.
Well, I think that's on the cards.
Right.
Yeah.
next
year.
Tesla's idea is about perpetual energy sources and stuff like that. You could sort of unleash some of this to figure that out. And
okay. There's a few equations in physics which are
sorry. I've got another thing I want to ask, but I think I interrupted you. I mean, you were about to say something, were you, before, or have you? I
was just going to say that it's more of an engineering problem rather than a science problem. It's not science fiction. This is we've built out a roadmap to get to a quantum computer that's going to be usable 2029, 2030 time frame.
Is there a scope for the temperature needing to be not quite so low? Or is that always been a thing?
I think
that would seem to be a limiting factor, the infrastructure.
There may be new ways of doing that in the future, but right now,
for the time being, it's got to be Kelvin.
You have to think that any form of electromagnetic radiation,
it's going to fuck
sound, anything will mess around with your qubits. So you have to have them as quiet as possible, and that's the whole idea, is to stabilize that. Yeah.
So having it in space doesn't help?
Well, that's a different problem because you have to get them into space. So the cost of that might be significant, but you also have to get it way down below the temperature of space.
No.
Oh, I thought space was 0 Kelvin.
No.
It's not?
No.
You've still got radiation, haven't you?
Yeah, you're going to have to reduce it. Yeah.
You haven't got conduction or convection, but you have got radiation. I remember that from GCSE physics.
Yeah.
I guess
it gets quite hot.
If you're in the sun, it is right.
Yeah, you're saying the sun's not hot, mate.
But that question about AI being used in quantum maybe sounded silly, but this idea that you could maybe realise, I mean, if it's as capable as people like Dario Amodei are saying now, could it be used I mean, I've heard it used in a kind of scientific research context with things like some of the medical stuff, for instance.
Yeah.
Could it be used to realise sort of gains in getting towards this nirvana of like, I don't know if it is nirvana, but the kind of some of these breakthroughs in quantum that we're talking about, that you can deploy AI on that and get to that point quicker than if it was just sort of human researchers working on it.
So I'm not a quantum computing expert, but I would.
But you are compared with us.
Yeah. So what I would say is, I go back to the high performance computing, right? Is that you're going to need both, and quantum computing would be very good at certain types of calculations, and that will help maybe the training of AI or optimization of AI or optimization of outputs. So there's possibilities there for it, definitely. But we'll have to see how that pans out.
I've got one more little thing, and then I'm going to ask either of you two if you've got any last things to say to get them out your system, because we've been going for an hour and we want to talk about some other stuff too. I touched on it earlier when I was going down a little yes please mate, going down a little rabbit hole. I was looking at IBM's share price, and it's generally done all right recently, but it fell off in February this year. And I went and just asked Google, why did that happen? And it was actually according to this one Forbes article that I fired AI? Well, I mean, by using Google, you necessarily use AI these days, don't you?
Well, unfortunately, you're shoehorned into it.
Exactly.
You can ignore the whole summary.
But no, I mean, it just pointed me to a Forbes article. I mean, it's still basically acting as a search engine. It pointed me to a Forbes article that says...
Arguably that is AI anyway, but anyway, go on.
Well, there we are.
Sorry.
That's right. You just keep fucking interrupting me. That's fine.
What's the name of the person who wrote it? Sorry.
Yeah. And the Forbes piece says IBM shares plummet 13%, worst day since 2000, after Anthropic launches programming AI tool. And it reminded me, this wasn't unique to IBM at all. This was like software companies, consulting companies, basically each time, and it seems to be Anthropic even more than OpenAI that does this, probably because its strength is in this sort of coding side of it. But each major increment of an Anthropic launch seems to lead to companies that are associated with software, services, sort of tech. I suppose the kind of things that you employ a lot of coders and consultants and clever people to do. The stock markets, and I know they're representative only of their own interests, but they tend to go, oh my God, there's no need for IBM anymore because of this Anthropic thing. And it's a massive overreaction, and then your share price since then has well, it hasn't, I mean, it's partially recovered, but not totally.
I think it was a specific release, and it was to do with, if I remember correctly, it was to do with optimization or transformation of mainframe code.
Right. So that's what I was going to ask you more broadly.
We were surprised at the reaction, purely because we've been doing that for about 2.5 years,
right?
With our own optimization capabilities.
So that's kind of what I remember.
One of the large operators from the US actually, when they got to Think last year, which is our big kind of annual conference.
Yes.
I expected that they would want to see agentic AI, or they'd want to see autonomous networks, and they immediately said, "Can you show me where you're optimizing mainframe, where you're updating it and modernizing it?" And that was their focus, because they had so much, running on mainframe from a transactional
And that's
perspective.
interesting, because I always associated IBM back in the day with mainframe.
Yeah.
And talking to you before we started recording, you reminded me that mainframe's still a big thing.
Oh, yeah.
It seems such an anachronistic concept.
Yeah.
But it's still a big thing.
No, so and the reason for that is that if you're doing transactions, like if you go out to the shops, I was mentioning this to you earlier, if you make a credit card transaction, chances are 90% of the time that's going to travel over IBM. And that's because those transactions, you do not want them failing, because people are making money, right? So there's a huge push behind that. But they need kind of 8 nines resilience, right? So when you look at that's about 354 milliseconds in a year.
Oh,
that's 8 nines. Wow. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So
I'm only used to thinking about 5 nines.
Yeah. So people often say, right, so can we move this onto other kit? And it's like, well, how unreliable do you want?
When we talk about 8 nines and 5 nines, are we talking about like 99.9 blah blah blah
With another 5 nines after the decimal point.
Of 6 nines after.
Of like
6 nines,
perfection of reliability.
So you get 354 milliseconds versus 5.5 minutes or something like that. And that's a lot of transactions on a global level.
So that's why these things that get thrown out to do with 5 nines and 6 nines or whatever it might be, they're built into SLAs basically.
Yeah.
And then if you are out for longer than 5 minutes, whatever it is, because I can't work out how you said it, but I can't remember. But then someone comes and goes, "You've not met the terms of the contract. You owe us some money
back."
Right.
Yeah. So that's normally comes into a kind of a risk versus reward discussion on mainframe. So
Okay.
So the thing I wanted to bring up, and I'll keep bringing it back because I can see that there's a potential for a massive tangent that will take up the rest of the pod just on this, is it's just that broader topic of every now and then everyone looks at AI and looks at especially Anthropic and Claude and now maybe Mythos and all the cool shit it can do and thinking it's going to automate and render obsolete loads of stuff that software companies can do and big technology companies that include consulting like IBM can do. To me, that always seems to be a little bit of an overreaction. And again, what you were talking about at the start of our conversation about things like governance and all that sort of thing would seem to be one of the reasons why I think there's an overreaction. People are being really binary, and just assuming because this stuff can potentially be done by Claude, therefore the people who have been doing it up until now are obsolete. But that seems to be an overstatement.
But I suppose if you're to look at it in telecoms, what I always see is that everybody wants to see where's the value, not just what's the technology, right?
Yeah.
So LLMs have capabilities which are great, right? Large ones, small ones. You're going to want to look at the individual kind of business analysis of which ones you use. And if you look at networks today, right? I mean, we think they're fairly performant, but we all know that they don't work all the time. And the losses associated with network outages are now starting to be more than IT outages. You know,
really?
Yeah, because they're causing
losses
the IT losses for different, like the likes of if you're making transactions, whether they be financial, you're making phone calls, you're sending data.
A lot of them are wireless.
Yeah. So you're looking at the networks, right? So a lot of those costs need to be managed, right? So, and for the operators, they're the ones that are making these losses because their customers are churning or leaving, right? So there's that. Then you also have the fact that we also have the slowdown problem where slow networks are causing even more costs on networks than outages. Right. So what we're doing is we're focused in on kind of in the area of autonomous networks is saying, well, look, we've got all of this capability. How do we put this together in an opinionated way so that telcos can take this on board and find these hard problems? Because their dashboards that they see today, they don't highlight these slowdown type of issues. And so we've been looking at these kind of hard use cases and we said, look, let's focus there because everybody's got a dashboard showing when it's working, when it's not working kind of thing. But let's focus in on how could we use really clever technology to, first of all, identify that there's a problem. So you have to manage the data streaming issue, which is a challenge with large network data. Then you have to use a time series model because LLMs are useless at time series. They don't understand time, right?
Okay.
So that when you put in network data, LLMs, they don't give you accurate results. So you use time series models. That creates an analytics or kind of left brain thinking around the data set. And now you've got, you found potential anomalies and patterns in the data that you've trained. You pre-train it on network data. And luckily, all IP data looks kind of the same to these models. They can figure out the differences pretty quickly because it's a pattern. Then you're using your reasoning model and your orchestration agent to decide what's the next step. So it goes off and it thinks about these results and says, I've seen this before, I haven't seen this before. What we need to do is check this data, or we need to check, are there any tickets open on this? Are there related issues on different areas? And it's all very domain specific, RAN, transport, core, enterprise, SD-WAN, whatever it'll be. So you have different models for different ones that are trained differently. And that allows them to be small and accurate. So then you bring all of that together with a decision-making capability. And at that point, I think everybody was happy. That was where the LLMs kind of went, that's great, we got some really good information. So now we're using time series, we're using LLMs. But actually what you want to do is you want to take action or recommend what the actions are. So you can run this in agentic mode where it makes its own decisions, or more than likely for quite a while, you're going to run this in a mode where it says, I've seen an issue. You may not have seen it yet, but it's slowing down because there's some MTU configuration issue on these devices. So they're not talking to each other very proficiently. So you're going to want to get that as a much more efficient connection. This is how you change it. This is and the reason and it goes through all the reasoning. It says this manual says this is the change to it, and these are the 3 times we did it in the past, and it worked. So now you feel confident to say, yes, do I have an automation for this? You may have built that. So one of the acquisitions we made was Pliant.
Yep.
So it was a workflow engine capability, which has already got a lot of the different equipment, built in as in a catalog. So it goes and it's able to make those changes automatically then for you, with you in the loop, obviously, for the decision making. And then you're able to use the system to monitor it and say, did everything come back? Then what I mentioned is we have the application side of it. We can ask that, were users affected? Are you seeing downtime as a result of this? So you're starting to kind of look between the cloud, the application, and the network to see where the issues are, and also to see, did the change that you made actually rectify the problem? So that's kind of that's why I think IBM in telecoms is significant.
Yes.
I think the enterprise opportunity is
enormous. That's very skillfully brought back to the core topic there, by the way.
Well, thank you.
My compliments.
But I think the enterprise side of it is really interesting as well, right? Because all of the large customers and medium-sized customers and small customers that they have some type of connectivity agreement with them, the operators. That's generally where their kind of relationship starts. But then they move on to other services like security, etc. We did a report with the GSMA for Mobile World Congress where we wanted to focus in on SMEs. So what we found is that looking across a large sample in a survey, 90% of revenue in enterprise is actually coming from SMEs. It's a very long tail.
Right.
Very long tail. And what they're looking for is more visibility, less hassle, less work for them to do manual work, etc. And they're willing to pay for it. So they stated clearly, if you make my life simpler, if you give me the visibility and dashboards that I need, I'm willing to pay. And it came out as an average of 34% more. If you give me AI tools which demonstrably improve my value, I will pay 30% more. So there's a market there. Now the challenge on the enterprise side, generally speaking, has been that each customer is different, so it looks kind of challenging, right? And then on the other side, you have the operators' enterprise division sometimes say that their staff are used to selling connectivity and security, but I don't know if they could do all of this. All of these things are getting much more simple to roll out. So you could, like for instance with BT, they have our SEV1 performance management product. And what they do is they provide the dashboard capability to their own customers so they can see when there's a connectivity problem.
Right.
And that gives them a lot more satisfaction because it's like being on a train and somebody either tells you you're going to be leaving in 3 minutes or you sit there wondering how long is this going to be, right? But they're seeing this straight away, so they're comfortable.
I've been there before.
Yeah, exactly, right? So that type of capability is key. And what we're doing is taking, that performance with this kind of network intelligence layer that we're building, and we're able to help them to find different issues on their enterprise networks. And that's the kind of thing that enterprises are willing to pay for.
How does all that, we're going to have to move it on. I was just going to, maybe to finish off, because we didn't really cover this, but how does all the stuff that you're doing overlap or not overlap with Red Hat? I mean, is Red Hat very much a kind of standalone thing within IBM? Because it always seems to be.
And by the way,
but
last time I saw you from afar was at Mobile World Congress on a stage on the IBM stand with recent guest on the pod, Fran Heeren.
Fran Heeren, yeah. So he was one of our guests there,
yeah. Anyway, sorry, I just thought I'd mention that, but...
Yeah, so with Red Hat, so the idea when we brought Red Hat in, I mean, one of the one of the things that people mentioned to us was, look, this people might react badly to you acquiring an open source company like this.
Yeah.
So how are you going to manage that? And the way that's managed is that they are kept at arm's length. They have to be a partner of ours. We build everything based on Red Hat. So all of the things I'm talking about right now all run on OpenShift.
Okay.
Yeah. But they have to be able to work with everybody else.
Yeah.
In the same way that, we sell technology and we work with many partners, but IBM Consulting sell our technology and other technologies.
Indeed. Yeah.
And that those kind of separations have to be in
Has to be a
place.
sort of firewall.
Because we've really embraced the kind of the open source position.
But there's not any kind of overlap at all between what you're doing and OpenShift itself, for instance.
No, but we would, for instance, use in our tooling, we would use OpenShift AI as part of the foundational element of that. Yeah.
Yep.
To summarize, what I'm taking away from it, all this stuff, when we start getting in the weeds on AI and quantum and all that sort of thing, it's fucking complicated.
Yeah.
And when you're talking about SMEs, a lot of them, they've got their core proposition, which doesn't necessarily involve them understanding all this complicated stuff.
Yes.
And so, back to my point, my little tangent about software and consulting companies' share prices being impacted when Anthropic comes out with a new thing. It feels like an overreaction to me, because there's, clever though these big LLM sort of frontier model people are, there's just an even greater need for various other companies to help everyone else get their head around it all.
Yeah.
Not at least me.
Yes.
And I certainly don't have my head around it. So that's not going to go away. And I think, when people talk, one of the concerns about AI and automation right now is this sort of obsolescence and all these jobs being taken away. And then the counter argument is always like, industrial revolution, people just moved on to learning how to do new shit. And I guess one of those new things that is going to fill that void is just helping people get their head around it all. And it seems to me like IBM's quite well positioned for that. So that's just my last thought on that.
Yeah. I think on the enterprise side as well, there's a lot of companies. So there's two sides. So on the small to medium size, they don't have necessarily a CIO office that, like you're saying, that's into the weeds on this kind of stuff. But they do know from the survey that we've seen, I think it was like 80% of them said that they expected to be using it in the next 2 years. So they could really, benefit from somebody providing a platform where they could go in and use these different technologies, but with some help.
Yeah.
Sometimes when they go to the cloud, they don't have quite the same. They have to figure it out themselves while they're there. Whereas if they could go in and use these capabilities, I've often talked to operators around different services, like, sustainability is something that people had to focus on, but they don't necessarily need to own a sustainability platform.
Indeed.
But an operator could provide one that they could access that would do the calculations they need using the small data that they have in comparison and get the result. And you get many customers. It would build revenue.
Another thing that occurs to me actually with SMEs, one big moat that really large companies have, one advantage they have over SMEs is things to do with regulation. Like, you sometimes counterintuitively, you'll hear big companies lobbying for more regulation. You're like, why the fuck do they want more regulation? And actually one of the reasons is this concept of a moat, because they've got all these internal compliance and legal people who can handle it, whereas SMEs don't have that. It seems to me that AI in that way could be a real leveler and get rid of some of those disadvantages that smaller businesses have in those areas.
And even large businesses, I mean, from the regulation perspective, on the flip side, from a regulatory perspective, their need to adhere to a lot of different regulations. And what we've seen now is that we have the new kind of push towards sovereignty.
Yeah.
And, that was probably an overused word for years, but really what it's about is we were looking at how do you make sure that the data is secured in country. But now it's actually more, how do I know that I can control my own business internally, right? We know that supply chain wise, that's a very long thing to solve, right? Because chips are made all over, right? But if you look at the control of the actual business itself, you might want to have that. So we found a lot of customers are interested in a thing that we're releasing called Sovereign Core, which builds that air-gapped kind of system. It's a software platform that we will put into that system, and it will allow you to know who has access to what they're using, which agents they're building, what those agents are doing. It will actually track whether those agent and model outputs are meeting the regulation needs, say, of the EU Act or whichever act is in place. Or there could be multiple, because if your customer is in the EU, you still need to adhere to it, right? So you have requirements right across that. So you're going to have thousands of agents.
Yeah.
So you're going to want to actually have technology checking, is it moving outside the boundaries of any of those? Is it still explainable? Do I have all the data sources? Do I know who's using it? What are the policies that are set up? So that's an area that we see
back to that managing complexity thing.
Yeah.
All right. If it's all right, I'm going to move
Sure.
it on because we don't have a lot of time left, and we just want to cover a couple of news bits
Yep.
that have happened. Let me take this opportunity to once more thank the sponsors of this podcast, Cohere Technologies, which is the innovator behind the Universal Spectrum Multiplier software for 4G and 5G, and Pulsone technology for 5G and 6G coexistence, ISAC and NTN. Nice one. I think one of them might be relevant to you, because just reminding myself, as you might have heard on the podcast, what passes for research that I do when we get a guest is to fire at their LinkedIn page.
Okay.
And your LinkedIn page reveals that you've been at IBM for quite a while, like 13 years, but you were once at Ericsson, which is quite timely, Ericsson Ireland specifically, because Ericsson just announced its latest quarterly numbers today. And we always talk about that on the pod because Ericsson's obviously one of the most important companies in the space that we write about.
Yeah.
So my headline was Ericsson vows to ride out component crunch after solid Q1. Ian's headline was Ericsson CEO aims to be less reliant on US as conditions worsen. So why don't I throw the ball to you, Ian? What was your take on the quarterlies today?
Yeah, my main take was the currency factor, to be honest.
I know, that was mad, wasn't it?
Because I think it's
Big
like
adjustment.
the most, I mean, on the earnings call, they were saying it's the most extreme one they've noticed for a long time. I remember being on a call with, like going back with Hans Vestberg, like years ago when it was the opposite situation. There was a time when the US dollar was really strong. And they only had to sell like sort of 2 base stations a year, and it was like loads of money if you're sort of like taking it in and converting it into krona. And it's now like the like you had the same chat. I even
did a screenshot of the exchange rate.
Yeah, I mean it's not a secret that the US dollar's been quite weak for a while, but I think the krona is particularly strong against a basket of currencies. But the weakness with the dollar is like quite significant for Ericsson because they are very exposed to the US, which is kind of my headline. Now, there's a number of concerns for them about the US market at the moment. One is currency weakness. So if you're getting 40% of your revenues from US customers, which they are, and I think the next biggest country on the list is India, down at something like 5% last year. So it's like a massive gap. Then that's kind of a bit of a concern. And having been everybody expects the US telcos to spend a lot of money compared with European ones. That's always like the kind of story. It's like they invest a lot more in 5G rollout, et cetera, Hasn't looked so good in the first quarter. There was some consolidation. I'd not missed it, but I kind of like neglected it a little bit. The kind of, when they're on the earnings call talking about US consolidation affecting the outlook, and I was thinking, what's going on here? And it was apparently this deal where T-Mobile acquired US Cellular.
I got that when I chatted to
I do remember we covered that at the time, but it's interesting because if you talk to Ericsson about consolidation in the UK or Europe, they often go, well, it's better to have one big strong operator spending money than it is to have like 2 networks where they don't really invest very much. And the flip side of that is that if you look at like, I think they're probably making a reference sometimes when they say that to Vodafone and Three that came together. If you look at what Vodafone and Three was spending in capital expenditure separately and add it up, it's actually quite a bit more than the combined companies investing in capex. So okay, maybe they're investing more in the RAN as a proportion, but if they're not, then they're going to be spending less on the RAN. And it sounds like the complaint about the US at the moment is that with T-Mobile taking over US Cellular and some rationalization, there might be some impact on spending there. And then apparently T-Mobile and Verizon have cut capex outlook as well. They didn't mention AT&T, but T-Mobile and Verizon are kind of guiding for less expenditure. So all of a sudden the US doesn't seem like such a great place to be. And
I think it's only relative to, I mean, what was it, down 2% year on year?
The US market?
For Ericsson in the quarterlies that we just wrote about today.
They don't break out US figures like that.
I think they did a North America one.
Well, they do a percentage of spending on the US, so you can. There's obviously a rounding factor, so you can't quite get an accurate number. So you can take their 39%.
Maybe I'm reading it wrong, but from this slide.
Yeah, that's North America. So
that's mainly US, isn't it?
It's mainly US. It's true, but the point is, I think. There was a big increase in spending this time last year, apparently also because of tariffs, like the issue with like people anticipating tariffs coming in, getting ahead of it. So the comparison's not very good anyway. But there's clearly a strategy now to be less reliant on the US. I mean, that was like a big message on the earnings call. It's like we need to sort of
not helped by you writing stories all the time about how over-reliant on the US.
But I think that to me is almost like a main takeaway. Is like you don't. It's obviously a massive market. They don't have access to China anymore because they've sort of been squeezed to the fringes in the same way that Huawei sort of been squeezed out of various Western markets. And the US has been where the telcos are spending a lot more. They generate higher ARPU there. The perception is they pay more anyway for products. The margins are a lot better. But if there's a slowdown going on and you've got currency weakness thrown into the mix, all of a sudden it doesn't look like such a great place to be.
Indeed.
And then the question is, I mean, by the way, Ericsson's under pressure anyway on a kind of cost front because I think their net profit went down by something like 79%.
There must have been some one-offs in that though.
Well, it's restructuring.
Just restructuring.
It's restructuring. So restructuring was $450 million US in the quarter compared with $33 million last quarter, this time last year.
Do we know what the source of that massively?
Because they're sacking thousands of people all the time.
So it's just that?
Yeah.
I mean, I understand that's normally what restructuring means. I just wondering if there's something more specific.
Layoffs in Sweden in particular, I think, is the one that's going on. But
sounds like getting sacked by Ericsson's quite a profitable thing to do. Well, you sacked by Ericsson now.
If you lay off people in Europe, you've obviously got to do. I mean, they probably negotiate severance packages anyway, but it's quite expensive to do, I think, in European markets. But it's if you look at the adjusted figures, where they take out the restructuring charges. I mean, yeah, it's taking out restructuring charges and some of the currency fluctuations. But if you look at the adjusted figures, it's not so bad.
Yeah,
but you can't get away from the fact that they're paying out money in restructuring charges. And
indeed, and in their outlook, they said, I've got their outlook slide here. Restructuring charges for 2026 are expected to be at elevated levels, so it's going to continue.
But I think they've never made a secret of that. They've always said that the plan is to continue with the redundancy program,
right?
Which, by the way, I think they were at about 105,000 employees in 2022. They're down to about 88,000 now.
So that's a lot of people you got to pay off.
A lot of people, and then to get to your headline, the component thing, which hasn't been a factor at all until now, which I think some titles got wrong.
Oh, did they? What?
Because that's not the reason why they've had a profit issue. Is component charges.
No, that was more an outlook thing.
Of an outlook thing.
Yeah.
But if that has an impact, so the component thing is basically,
and that's a margin thing. Yeah.
Well, it's what they're spending on semiconductors basically and memory chips.
Yeah. If if they got to pay more for the same shit, that's going to eat into their margins.
Yeah, but what I was going to say is, if there's the problem with the component issue is, which is prompted by demand for AI, which is squeezing capacity for other types of chips and also driving up memory components, is that they want to try and pass on some of those costs to their customers.
Yeah.
And there's a danger in doing that, obviously, because you have to go into some kind of negotiation. I mean, it depends what contracts look like, but
and they might say that sounds like a you problem.
Well, it isn't a you problem, though, is it? I mean, if they're trying to buy equipment and semiconductors are a higher price, then you would expect that. I mean, it's a normal thing to expect those costs to be shared. And obviously, the Ericsson's customers don't want Ericsson to. There's not a lot of RAN suppliers in the market. This is This is the Open RAN thing. Hasn't really worked. There's not really a lot of options.
No.
You don't want your best RAN supplier in the whole world that you can use to be struggling to develop products in the future because you've not shared in some of the pain.
So one of the reasons I flagged up the U problem thing is I was just looking at some of the quotes. Like I'll read a quote from Boy Ekholm that was just his standard quote that came with the things. He seemed to be trying to mitigate that. And so I'll just read it out. He goes, our multi-year investments in building a resilient, diversified supply chain, no need for that extra comma there, Ericsson's writers, have enabled us to deliver consistently for customers amidst, and again, I've got such a bee in my bonnet about amidst.
Oh, yeah.
What's the difference between amidst and amid? There's no need for the ST.
No.
Sorry.
It's like whilst and
I've gone in, yeah, exactly. I've gone into pedant mode now. Yeah. Amidst geopolitical and macroeconomic uncertainties, we're facing increasing input costs, especially in semiconductors, caused in part by AI demand. Our ambition, this is the bit that sprung to mind just now, Ian, while I'm banging on about this. Our ambition is to offset these challenges by working closely with customers and suppliers, and through product substitution and efficiency action. So he seems to be trying to say...
Well, they were more direct about that on the call, and Per Narvinger, who's the head of the mobile network, was more direct about that when I did my 10-minute thing with him. He's like, obviously, we don't want to capture all of that ourselves, and that's fair enough. I think that's normally what happens when you have something like this going on, but it's quite an awkward position to be in where you're trying to look to make money outside America because there's a currency issue there and there's a slowdown in spending, and you're trying to maybe look to other markets to compensate for that. But you've also got to go to to the customers in those markets and say, by the way, we want you to pay higher prices because there's a semiconductor shortage. So I think it's
OpenAI is taking all the chips.
Yeah, it's not an idea. I mean, this would not be a problem so much if people were spending like loads of money on 5G rollout, but the 5G market has shrunk quite a bit in the last 3, 4, 5 years, and there's no sign of it going up. I mean, Omdia's sister company to Telecoms.com and Light Reading, Omdia, is forecasting sort of flat market this year, which is better than a decline. I think it declined badly in 2023 and 2024.
As is Delora, which is where Ericsson takes a lot of its forecasts from, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's just basically flat at the moment. And I think the projection is, and Ericsson and Nokia are the same, like all the way out to 6G, that it's fairly flat. And I'm not very optimistic about 6G bringing a big increase. It's not going to, I don't think 6G is going to be this.
I don't think anyone's optimistic about that.
I don't think anybody thinks 6G is going to be this big investment wave that you had when you went from 4G to 5G or 3G to 4G. So anyway, that's my general take on Ericsson.
I think you do get those cycles though.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what happened as well. I think after 4G was rolled out, there was kind of a gap of a few years, and probably the way it's worked out in the markets at the moment, that kind of stalling of investment isn't helping them at the moment either. So that's I think they're probably going to benefit, hopefully, in the future from the 6G rollout, which may or may not be software, hardware related. But I think the uptake in applications at that point is probably what they're waiting for. And that's not going to be a single application. It's going to be a widespread set of applications.
Let alone a killer one.
I do think there's a chance for them to, I mean, in a flat RAN market, if they're going to compensate for a slowdown in America, the implication is we're going to grow market share, yeah? That's the only way you're going to, and I asked Per Narvinger about this, and they don't want to go.
I meant to ask him and I forgot to ask him. I was kicking myself.
I mean, there was a little bit of chat on the earnings call about that. There's obviously the Huawei factor, because some markets Huawei is possibly likely to get banned from in the next couple of years. There's still this conversation going on in Europe about, a clampdown. I don't know, but there are some markets that they used to be in that they're not in anymore, where obviously Ericsson's got a massive opportunity it didn't have before. We're in one of them now. The UK clearly has been huge for Ericsson in the last few years because they've had to move towards Ericsson and Nokia from Huawei. So you can see market share growth opportunities there. Maybe there's some opportunities because some of the Open RAN companies that were hoping to build market share haven't really survived, and Mavenir's pulled out of doing radios, Rakuten's not really been able to expand in the same way. NEC seems to be, focusing on massive MIMO rather than remote radio units. So there's maybe opportunities there. I do wonder whether they've got a chance against Nokia. I mean, that's the one other player that one other big player.
That's what I read between the lines when they said they kept stressing how their organic growth was 6% in a market that's flat,
which is good.
Yeah, in a market that's flat. And so if they're growing in a market that's flat, they must be taking share from someone.
Yeah,
that's the crude.
But I did ask, and I didn't really get an answer. I know they have. I mean, we can probably get analyst numbers on this at some point. Omdia comes out with something, but it's not usually until a little bit later than now about the kind of makeup of the RAN market. But they have gone up from before Per Narvinger took over that role, and it was Frederick Yedling, I think between sort of 2016 and 2022, 2023, they'd gone up like a percentage point every year. A lot of that was related to not necessarily some of the Huawei stuff, but Nokia not being in a great place at the time with its RAN strategy. There's a big question mark over Nokia's RAN strategy at the moment. And it might be an opportunity
to do with the NVIDIA stuff.
To do with the NVIDIA stuff, because I have it from CTOs that I've spoken to, who I can't name.
They're not fucking convinced.
It's not necessarily they don't believe in the NVIDIA stuff. It's that if you've got two tracks there, you're worried about their commitment to the older track.
I see.
It's that kind of uncertainty about how committed are you to, how much is the NVIDIA thing about making the stock price look good and getting some investment in, and how seriously is NVIDIA about doing GPUs that you can slot into AirScale chassis, and that don't melt them, rather than the stuff that
people are rightly asking, can you be totally committed to both?
And then if you ask Nokia about, well, what does it mean for the whole purpose-built stuff that you've done with Marvell Technology, they'll tell you obviously that, we're still committed to that. But you look at their profit margins, they're awful in mobile networks. I mean, they're basically almost not profitable because of what's happened in North America. So North America, the whole North America thing is you make most of your margins in North America if you're in the RAN business. If you lose a deal with AT&T and Verizon within a few years, and you've only got T-Mobile left as your customer, then that has a huge impact on your ability to survive in that market. And that's been the question about them. And therefore trying to maintain two separate development tracks is only going to add cost when you're trying to take cost out of the business. So that I'm not saying Nokia's got it wrong. I'm just saying there's a kind of question mark.
There
about
are the challenges they're facing,
and maybe there's some opportunity for Nokia, for Ericsson there. On the other hand, if everybody buys into this GPU stuff, and Justin Hotar, the CEO of Nokia, has kind of called a blinder, then it could all work out very well for them. It's quite an interesting time in the RAN sector in a way because of that. Even though it's a flat market and no one's sort of talking about 6G growth, this whole AI RAN thing I think throws something different into the mix, and because they have quite different strategies to do with it, I think it's quite interesting to watch.
One last thing I have to say on my conversation with Per Narvinger, when I was asking him about the component crunch, and most of the headlines about the component crunch had been around memory.
Yeah,
RAM,
it's just general,
RAM and whatever the other one is that's more for storage.
SSD.
Oh yeah, but what's the underlying technology in an SSD?
NV something?
No, it doesn't matter. We know what we're talking about. We're talking about RAM and the storage memory. But Per was telling me that actually it's the chips themselves, it's the semiconductors, the processors that are proving to be a big crunch for Ericsson. Because
I think it's just any semiconductors, because the problem is that TSMC dedicates its capacity to like working for NVIDIA and its big customers, and therefore you get sort of squeezed to.
Yeah, I was just leading up to that. Yeah. But there are other people who, like Samsung, who I think make the memory side of things.
Well, there's not anybody other than TSMC and Samsung basically as your big foundries for doing those.
But I'm just telling you what Per Narvinger told me. I'm just passing on the message.
Yeah, I know, but all I'm saying is the only foundries that you've got who are doing those small nanometer chips really are Samsung.
Exactly.
And
TSMC. And that small nanometer was the point I was leading up to. You will have known this already, but it wasn't immediately obvious to me that that at the 3 nanometer process, which is the current cutting edge process, that quite a lot of the chips that Ericsson needs are at that process. For some reason, I assumed that they might be able to use slightly more legacy processors for their stuff.
I think most of their chips are not 3 nanometer at the moment. They're always a generation.
I was talking them up a fair bit.
They're always a generation behind smartphones.
Unless I misheard him.
No,
if you're listening and I'm talking shit, then feel free to write in.
No, he said the same thing. But all I'm saying is they're always a generation behind the smartphone side of things.
Well, no, that's not what I got from him.
Okay, so he said they're a generation behind the smartphone side of things.
One of us is wrong, and it's almost certainly you.
You're not wrong, but they don't have 3 nanometer chips in at the moment. They're working towards 3 nanometer chips in the base stations. Your latest smartphones...
Maybe it's a capacity thing. Like a manufacturing capacity going ahead of the curve.
Yeah, the capacity issue is because you've only got a couple of foundries that do chips anywhere below like 10 7 nanometer chips,
which is why China's
only 2 big foundries doing. So whatever you're making on those most advanced process nodes, if you've got a huge demand for like AI chips, it's taking capacity away from. It's constraining.
Well, maybe I misunderstood him. What I got from my albeit brief conversation with him.
We're talking at cross purposes. I'm just saying that
but what I understood was that they're using chips that are currently manufactured on the 3 nanometer process.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're not using. They're developing chips on 3 nanometer.
So that's the only difference is using.
But at the same time, they're always about a generation behind the smartphone side of things.
I think we found where we were slightly talking past each other.
Hope so.
Yeah. He's thinking, how long are they going to keep flogging this fucking dead horse for? Cool. All right. I mean, I don't have anything else to say on Ericsson. I mean, their narrative for lots of quarters is not been very exciting. It's like solid execution in uncertain times, that sort of thing, and that's fine. It's not their fault. They're obviously constrained by the market they exist in, and it's a flat market, and they seem to be doing all right. And as you were just saying earlier, they seem to be doing better than Nokia in that space.
I don't think they're doing all right on a comparison with other RAN vendors. Yeah. I don't think they're doing. I wouldn't say they were necessarily doing
all right. Full stop.
All right. I don't think it's good if whether it's currency factors or markets look at what your reported sales are. I think you had a comment in your story about the stock price not like dropping, even though this.
But it dropped and then it recovered.
I mean, there was a share buyback. Yeah, that was the thing. There was a share buyback last night. So. There was an announcement of plans for a share buyback. What share buybacks do is they tend to sort of push up the stock price, yeah? So the counter to the rather gloomy update where they missed forecasts, by the way, and all that stuff. You'd expect that.
Yeah, a little bit. They didn't miss by a shitload though.
They didn't miss by a shitload, but they also warned of like various pressure points. I mean, you'd normally have expected, given what sometimes happens, the stock to go down a bit, and like you said, it didn't. But I think
the weird thing is it did, and then it sort of quickly recovered.
Yeah, okay, but. It didn't. It recovered. I'm saying that it didn't. We're looking at it now, and the net effect is it's not down. Fair enough. Think it's probably because of the share buyback potentially.
Okay, cool. That hadn't occurred to me, so I'm sure you're right. Okay, shall we move on to the last thing? So probably the biggest single bit of news this week from our space is Amazon buying Globalstar. And it had been rumoured for a little while. I think we did a sort of journalism a month or two ago. Someone like the FT or Bloomberg, whoever, got an early citer on it. They often do. I often think, Owen, are you familiar with the concept of a trial balloon? Your neutral expression says that you're opening me to explain it.
Explain it.
Don't worry, it wasn't a trick. You're not like a dick if you don't know what it is. Trial balloon is basically a comms technique where people slip things into the public domain anonymously.
Oh yeah.
To see how they are processed by the market, by the wider world. But because it's anonymous,
market sentiment.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But because it's anonymous, it's deniable, and it cannot. It's like much less commitment than making an official announcement. That's all it is. And so when these things come out, and normally the people who get the trial balloon leaks are the big financial titles like the FT or the Wall Street Journal or Bloomberg or whatever. And this Globalstar thing was, in my opinion, trial ballooned a little while ago, and then it became official this week. And it's interesting because it's Amazon. So the big the big leader, certainly in terms of LEO, which is low Earth orbit satellite comms, which is where most of the action is in terms of satellite comms right now, is SpaceX and God, it's slipping my mind. What's it called? The brand? Starlink. There we are. I just had a complete mental block on it.
Same company.
Yeah, exactly. But Starlink wouldn't come into my head. And Amazon's, obviously Amazon's got lots of money, and Jeff Bezos, who's a big part of this, even though he's taken a step back from day-to-day Amazon, he's a big part of this. Amazon. What's the Amazon bit?
Probably still phoning it in though, isn't he?
Blue Planet?
Yeah.
Telling them what to do.
Well, yeah, and it's called. They just call it Amazon Leo.
Leo's the
Amazon Leo. Wasn't that was that Kuiper?
Yeah, it's the same
used
thing.
to be Project Kuiper. Yeah, exactly. And they rebranded it Leo. So they've nicked Leo. As a term, which is a bit cheeky, isn't it?
It is, since it describes what it
the
is.
whole thing.
It's quite a good brand, though, isn't it?
It'd be like calling it Amazon Satellite or something.
Yeah.
Is the logo like a lion or something?
Well, exactly. That's the thing. It's like king of the.
Is there anything left in there? Yeah. Cool. Yeah, go on. Anyway, I'm going to shut up in a sec because I know you covered it, Ian, and I actually didn't.
I didn't really cover it.
Oh, but you. Oh, that's it. No, you said you had an opinion on it.
We covered it. Light Reading covered it. Jeff Baumgartner covered it, and Michelle covered it. So
so Andrew covered it. So we're all with a blind leading the blind to a certain degree because Andrew covered it for us.
I was interested that it provoked quite a lot of chatter about satellite generally.
Well, exactly, and that's why I wanted to pass the ball to you, Ian, and obviously you, Owen, as well. Yeah. I'm amazed I haven't fucked your two names up, Ian and Owen, so far.
I get called Ian a lot.
Yeah. But Ian, what did you think of it, and what are your thoughts on all this activity and investment going on in the satellite space on the whole?
I mean, it's what 11.57 billion, I think, for Global Star that they paid, which is a. I mean, I've been aware of Global Star since I worked for Analysis back in the late 90s, because I can probably get away with saying this now, but they were like a client. They were like one of the first companies that I went and have meetings with back in,
I think you can get away
2000, like in a different form, back in the days when Iridium and Teledesic was still around, and people were talking about satellite being the internet in the sky that would do services for everybody. And
fast forward,
and then terrestrial happened, and they went into all those satellite companies. Some of them failed, and some of them went into maritime, and it became a niche thing. And now it seems to have come back to some extent. But if you look at Global Star's accounts, I think like annual revenues are between 250, 300 million.
Right.
And they're loss making still, or their losses have narrowed a lot.
So that price tag seems.
And they have 800,000 direct subscribers for their mobile satellite services, although the numbers are bigger if you look at them serving sort of enterprise customers. So it's a bit hard to sort of say how many people are actually using Global Star. They've very much been associated with that deal they did with Apple a couple of years ago. Where,
and that got reiterated in this announcement this week.
If you're out sort of and you need emergency help, you can sort of fire off an SOS message, and
exactly
the helicopters will come.
You like to say when you've fallen down a crevice, which I think sounds vaguely obscene to
me. And so they're not. You're thinking 11.57 billion to pay for this company sounds a bit outrageous, but they do have. I think the sort of equity analyst research notes that I was looking at was saying the main attraction was the spectrum. Really, it's like one of those deals that it's almost like the T-Mobile Sprint buy, not quite the same, but the main interest was clearly the fact that Sprint had all this 2.5.
Spectrum's always considered this gold asset.
They have this S-band spectrum, I think, that's considered to be very useful, and it would give them a kind of leg up, and therefore that kind of was the main motivation for Amazon to kind of come forward and do it. And there's other,
and I guess they have satellites in the sky.
They have satellites in the sky.
And they have a plan for quite a lot. So,
and they plan for a lot, and they have some.
So that accelerates Amazon's
totally. There's some expertise there. But Amazon's a long way behind Starlink. It's like, I think they have like 250 satellites launched, Amazon Leo.
Right.
And you've got Musk's now on, Starlink's now on like 10,000 plus.
Wow.
These Leo satellites. And that business is really going. I mean, like Starlink seems to be on a real tear. It's like it's you can't go and sort of delve into their reports, obviously, on their investor website. It's all like speculation or what he's told journalists. But, the sales are up quite a lot. I've got sort of 10 million customers, I think, now. So, and that's up a lot in the last year. There's all this talk about them competing against terrestrial. He was making some comments on a podcast last year about using some of the AWS 4 stuff that he got from EchoStar to do direct-to-device, like streaming video services. Yeah. So, like, you can, when you're getting attacked by a bear and you're waiting for the helicopter to fly,
you can film it.
You can watch The Revenant or something. Like, feel like, this is...
And just like try and not do what Leo DiCaprio did.
Yeah.
Try and not get your arse bitten off.
So it's like everybody's like really excited about satellite all of a sudden, and there's like various blogs that have gone out from people like Owen, CTOs in telecom who know stuff about it, saying, can satellite be competitive with terrestrial and all this?
Well, that's a good way of queuing up for Owen as a CTO. I'll put you on the spot. I mean, there's a lot of... We haven't really had the time to chat about it. We were thinking of doing a bit of a Mobile Congress retrospective, but we haven't had time on this pod. Maybe we'll get you back and do that.
Sure.
But one of the things that came up a lot this year was the satellite side of things.
Yep.
What do you think about Ian's scepticism, which I agree with, about the amounts of money involved and the market potential, the corresponding market potential? What are your thoughts about the sector?
I suppose from a consumer perspective, it always concerned me that you would need so many satellites in the sky to provide the type of coverage that people come to expect. But as a fallback, it might be significant enough. And now they seem to be looking at, fairly good rates.
I just don't understand sorry to interrupt. Yeah. I just don't understand the revenue potential for this fallback.
Yeah, so I think you've got sort of a few different revenue potentials. One would be fallback. One would be direct customers, because they're just not getting well served in the area that they're in, which in countries like the US, very significant. But then when you also look at the operators themselves. So if you have a mobile site and you get an outage at the edge of your network, but you still want to transmit the information back to your core network, then that is one way that you could do it. So you could actually use it as like an enterprise backup for your own transmission.
Redundancy type of thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's a few different levels. I haven't worked it out. I don't know if it all stacks up.
There's a lot of investment in it. So have done the math.
As usual, in these kind of things, a little bit like AI, there's a lot of investment. Not everybody's going to win, but the winners will be significant players, and those who lose, they will still have assets in the sky, which somebody else will buy at a percentage of cost, and there's going to be some benefit.
think it's a battle between satellite companies rather than a satellite company challenging terrestrial. And I think the fact that I think a lot of what drives this is, these guys are these sort of tech bros.
Egos.
They're big egos. Like satellite sounds quite sexy. It's better than selling books through the post.
Yeah, and Jeff Bezos is like, I'm not going to let a fucking Musk have the whole market.
I completely agree. I think that's what's driving a lot of this. I think a lot of it is we want to be the satellite player. Now, also the opportunity itself. So I remember seeing Elon Musk back before he was such a massive bellend in 2021.
Every time he brings it up, he's got to slag him off. I hope he's not listening. He'll sue your ass.
Oh, I do. I seriously hope he's listening. That'd be great if he's listening to the Telecoms.com podcast. But,
I'm sure that's the first time he's heard himself called that.
But he was on the 2021 the Mobile Congress that got kind of shrunken because of a pandemic, being interviewed by Justin Springham when he was going through his sort of more thoughtful and modest phase before he started supporting people like Tommy Robinson. And he was talking about
he does do some wacky political stuff, doesn't he?
Well, that's one way of describing it. But he was saying that the first challenge is obviously not to get out of business, because you might have to invest sort of 30 billion in this. I don't know what the estimates are of what they've spent so far, but it's maybe getting something close to 20 billion. And that's the first challenge, not to get out of business. Then the target market initially. Now, he might have changed his minds about this when he's talking about using AWS full spectrum to sort of send high bandwidth video to phones. But the target market from the putting dishes on your rooftop, et cetera, is about 3%, I think, 2 or 3% of the world's population. Now, 3% of the world's population, a planet of 8.3 billion people or whatever, is like 250 million people.
Are we over 8 billion now?
Yeah.
I lost track.
So you're talking now.
Did you feel it?
250 million
I
people.
thought it looked a bit crowded.
A lot of those aren't going to be target customers, obviously, because they're just very poor people living in the back of beyond. But even if it's a size, they're on about 10 million at the moment. And if they're talking now about being competitive against terrestrial in some areas where, like the UK, for instance, which I don't think they were ever really thinking about other than the Outer Hebrides and, bits of remote Scotland, then you say you can get some footprint there and you can do that in every country at a cost of 30 billion, then all of a sudden it doesn't, like 3% sounds crap, but worldwide 3% doesn't sound so bad. And if you're the only player doing that, and by the way, Jeff Bezos hasn't been able to get his act together, and things like AST, Space Mobile and all those other things are going to be nowhere. And that seems to be the general feeling at the moment, is that he's so far ahead now on the LEO stuff.
Do you think this global star thing, are we going to have to wrap in a minute, because I think we must be getting close to 2 hours, aren't we, Pierre? Do you think this global...
We're past that already.
We're past that already. Do you think this global star thing is a bit of a panic buy?
I think global star is not a panic. I think it's like you were saying, it's Bezos not wanting... He wants a part of this market. They've talked about Kuiper for a long time. They've obviously made a lot of investment there. This probably seems like the best way to get some of the assets and expertise they need to take it to the next level. And there's an opportunity there that he's seen Musk going after and doesn't want him to get all of it. And by the way, 11 billion sounds like a lot, but for guys like, it's like Nvidia putting $1 billion into Nokia. It's like, who cares? Yeah. It's not a big... It
accelerates his time to market, so he's in the game. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Well, and to go full circle, I mean, IBM over the years has been quite acquisitive and seems to have done quite a good job of it. I'm always in two minds about M&A, because sometimes it can go horribly wrong. But
I don't think that's one that would necessarily, a global star takeover.
Yeah.
It's not like there's a big overlap of... It's not like a big sort of existing business where you're trying to bring two clashing units together. It's a spectrum acquisition and some expertise.
Gives them a little...
Yeah.
Well, when we looked at a number of different, like Red Hat was an example. That was something that when they looked at it, it was like, well, do we build it? Do we partner? Do we buy it? And thought, no, this is going to save us a minimum of 3 years.
Right.
In a market which is going to be ripe in 3 years. So
and clever people will be doing actuarial calculations.
Yeah.
You always sort of think, why do M&A when you could just build it from scratch? But obviously building it from scratch costs money itself.
Yeah, and we're like, there's only so much work you can do yourself as well, right? Without taking on more and more risk of building up huge, research and development and product teams, etc. So, there's been a number of acquisitions we've made where we've seen that, the AI plumbing or nervous system is actually the hardest bit for a lot of enterprises to crack and telecoms. So managing all of that data transitions and managing, the governance and managing how agents are going to interact and the communication and the security, it all sounds like, terribly complex stuff. And it is, but, we've made acquisitions now across HashiCorp for automation across the cloud. You're making those in Aptio, which will calculate the cost of cloud, the cost of AI, so that you can build agents now that feed into those and say, before I roll this out, what's the cost? So you can actually start to build a sort of a digital twin for everything you do, where you're saying, what's the cost? What's the sustainability impact? What's my vendor cost going to be? What are the licenses? All of that can come into it. But you can also say, what's the performance increase? What's the revenue that I get? So managing all of that AI together is complex, but we think that plumbing, that nervous system that keeps it all running between lots of different LLMs from different vendors, not necessarily ours, different agents that are built by the customer, by ourselves, by others, across multi-cloud, hybrid cloud, then that's where the challenge is, the big challenge is. And we think that the acquisitions we're making at the moment, like you've seen, I don't know if you saw DataStax was another one, Confluent, these are all moving in that direction to manage the flow of data and, keep that nervous system running.
Well, I'm pleased you use the word plumbing, because I use that as a catch-all for shit that I don't understand. I.e. all the cleverness that makes things work.
Yeah.
And, so many companies. I've been a tech journalist for a little while, and probably if I was a bit more conscientious, I would understand what some of these companies do a little bit better than I do. But most tech companies do plumbing. They do stuff that for a regular person who isn't a tech journalist or isn't involved in the tech sector, has no reason to have ever heard of them. But God, there's so much value and there's so much activity in that space. So yeah, I'm totally with you. And chatting to you, Owen's definitely helped me to understand a bit better about where IBM fits into the plumbing side of things. Cool. Well, I think I'll wrap it up there because we've overrun. I'm now, having sat in exactly the same position for over 2 hours, going to attempt to get up, which will likely be a very undignified process with my dodgy back.
Even more undignified.
Even more undignified than I normally am. So I'll be grateful if Pierre stopped filming while I do that. And but hopefully, I'll be in slightly better form next week, and we'll be back in the studio then. So thanks a lot for coming, Owen.
Thank you very much.
Great to chat to you.
Great to be here.
And thanks for listening, and make sure you join us for that one.